Chapter 808. Jiang Taixian was the only one among the four who had achieved a breakthrough in the realm of immortal techniques. The joy in his heart was indescribable. Originally, he had been in the late stage of the Golden Core realm. Although the Tribulation Transcendence had given him great benefits and deepened his foundation, it had not improved his realm of immortal techniques. But this time, because of Ziyue's enlightenment and the support of the Law Cultivation Room, his realm had immediately loosened, and he had broken through from the late stage of the Golden Core realm to the perfected Golden Core realm. The foundation brought about by the Tribulation Transcendence and the increase in strength after the breakthrough had boosted his confidence. He believed that he was not weaker than any other cultivator of the same realm. He could be crowned as a Golden Core King and be comparable to the true disciples of the major sections. The three of them had all gained something, and their cultivation had improved. But in terms of gains, it was Fan Qingyu who had gained the most. Although she had not broken through her realm, because of her special physique, she was naturally compatible with the Great Path. Therefore, her understanding of the heavenly Tao was much deeper than that of ordinary cultivators. This time, Ziyue's creation, whether it was the Book of the Great Path or the Law Cultivation Room, had revealed the heavenly Tao's heavenly Tao clearly. Bathed in it, her physique resonated with it, and a special power of heavenly Tao flowed into her body, giving her a sense of perfection. That was a sign that her Taoist body had been repaired and her physique had evolved. Her Taoist body had reached the perfected stage. Under the perfected stage, although her cultivation had not improved, the benefits that came with it were absolutely amazing. Cultivators who had a natural Taoist body were favored by heaven. They were naturally close to the heavenly Tao, and their cultivation speed was incomparably fast. The perfected stage not only greatly improved her physique, but also made her foundation and accumulation extremely deep. In the future, her cultivation speed would be even more amazing. At this moment, although Fan Qingyu was only at the peak of the godly realm, her aura and strength were no weaker than that of a middle-stage Golden Core realm cultivator. Another thing worth mentioning was that perhaps because of the perfected stage, the heavenly Tao's aura that had been constantly revealed on her body had completely disappeared. It did not disappear, but was completely under her control and could be controlled and revealed at will. Thank you, North Nether Sect Leader. I can't thank you enough for your kindness. The group of people immediately noticed the changes in their bodies and looked at Ziyue excitedly. You're too polite. It's just a coincidence. Bai Ziyue shook his head. He was clearly aware that a similar fortuitous encounter might be extremely ordinary to him. After all, his reserves and strength far surpassed countless cultivators, but it might not be the same for other cultivators. The reason they were able to evolve and improve so much was naturally because of such opportunities. For other cultivators, it was incomparably profound and important. Thank you. At this moment, Fan Qingyu came closer and said in a low voice, Why did the aura of the Tao Law on your body disappear? Has your Tao body reached perfection? True Highness Mo Fan exclaimed when he finally noticed the difference in Fan Qingyu. That's right. My Tao body has been completely replenished and perfected. Now, I can start breaking through and condensing my Golden Core at any time. Fan Qingyu smiled. She was overjoyed. Furthermore, there was something she did not say. If she condensed her Golden Core now, it would almost certainly be a first-grade Golden Core. Furthermore, she was at least 80% confident that she would be able to attain the ZG Golden Core. The ZG Golden Core was known as the king of the Golden Cores. It not only represented foundation and strength, but also unlimited potential. This time, Bai Ziyue had created a technique, and almost everyone had benefited greatly. Bai Ziyue was also very satisfied. After all, his path of creation had been quite smooth. He already had a direction. Now, he only lacked energy. When he occupied the Five Peaks Mountain and set up the mountain protection formation, he could naturally use the endless spiritual qi in the spiritual vein to deduce. He was not in a hurry. Look, we've arrived at the Five Peaks Mountain. Suddenly, Jiang Taixian let out a cry of surprise. Then, Everyone looked over and saw 5 huge mountains standing on the horizon. These 5 mountains were like 5 huge fingers. They stood there with their hands hanging down, as if they were grasping but not grasping at the same time. In the surroundings, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth spread out, forming a dense fog. Occasionally, it would gather into clouds, and the clouds would turn into birds. Then, with a soft sound, spiritual rain would fall. The spiritual chi turned into fog, spiritual chi turned into birds, and spiritual chi turned into rain. This was a phenomenon that would only happen when the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was extremely dense. No wonder it's a high-grade 5 spiritual vein. Its aura is extraordinary. Master Calmheart exclaimed in admiration, revealing a hint of intoxication. Thinking about how he was going to set up a formation in this huge mountain range, he felt even more excited. A superior grade 5 spiritual vein is already so extraordinary. I wonder how the legendary grade 6 spiritual vein will be like. Jiang Taixian, who was standing aside, also said in shock. A grade 6 spiritual vein is actually not much different from a superior grade 5 spiritual vein. It's just that at the core, there's an additional trace of fortune, and immortal spiritual chi will be born. This immortal spiritual chi contains great fortune. Just a trace of it has great fortune, and it's thousands of times better than spiritual chi. It's a treasure that only spirit-severing stage cultivators can absorb and refine. Although primordial spirit realm cultivators can absorb it, it's much more difficult. Of course, the benefits after absorbing it are also very great. After many years, it can increase the chances of breaking through to the spirit-severing stage. Unfortunately, my aptitude is not high, and my strength and status in the sect are relatively low. In addition, there are many rare flowers and herbs in the sect, and the Great Tao Treasure Tree needs immortal spiritual chi to grow. Therefore, I can only absorb 30 strands of immortal spiritual chi every year. True Supremacy MO fan explained with a smile. Obviously, although he said it was a pity, he was actually quite satisfied. After all, only a grade 6 spiritual vein could produce immortal spiritual chi. How rare were grade 6 spiritual veins in the entire star realm? Even the Celestial Spirits sect had to pay a huge price and endless resources to nurture and cultivate them. The original grade of the Celestial Spirits sect's spiritual vein was actually only a grade 5 spiritual vein. Zuek nodded silently. He didn't care much about the grade of the spiritual vein. A grade 5 spiritual vein was enough to supply the consumption of a large sect. Although a grade 6 spiritual vein was more precious, it was not necessary. Moreover, the Biming sect that he created was still in the initial stage of development. It could be called a small sect. This grade 5 spiritual vein was enough to supply its development for hundreds of thousands of years. If there was a need in the future, it would not be too late to consume resources to upgrade its grade. It was almost impossible for the outside world to have one, except for the 10 major celestial forces. Roar. At this moment, a loud roar suddenly came from Mount Wuji in the distance. Following that, roars could be heard one after another. From afar, everyone could see that in Mount Wuji, there were many gigantic spirit monkeys climbing and howling excitedly. These spiritual monkeys were covered with silver hair. They were strong, and their fingernails were long like sharp blades that could easily cut through mountains and split rocks. However, the most peculiar thing about them was that they had more or less tails behind them. Among them, there were more than 4 or 5. Even if there were fewer, there were more than 2. Perhaps only some of the spirit monkeys that were in their infancy stage had a tail growing on their bodies. Those are spiritual monkeys, multi-tailed spiritual monkeys. The number of tails determines their status and strength in the tribe. Other than the spiritual monkeys in their infancy, who only have 1 tail, most of the multi-tailed spiritual monkeys have more than 2 tails. 2 tails are equivalent to the aperture awakening realm for us cultivators. 3 tails are equivalent to the God realm. 4 tails are equivalent to the golden core realm. five tails are equivalent to the primordial soul realm. True Supremacy MO fan looked at the spiritual monkeys in the distance and introduced them. I heard that there is a six-tailed spiritual monkey among the multi-tailed spiritual monkeys. Is this six-tailed spiritual monkey equivalent to a spirit-severing realm expert? Fanching you couldn't help but ask in surprise. As a disciple of the Celestial Spirit sect, she had heard of the Mount Wuji and knew that there was a six-tailed spiritual monkey. Now that she heard that the five-tailed spiritual monkeys had the strength of the primordial soul realm, she couldn't help but feel nervous. After all, although Zua was strong, he was at most in the ultimate primordial soul realm. He was no match for a spirit-severing realm beast. That's not the case. Although the six-tailed spiritual monkey is much stronger than the five-tailed spiritual monkeys, it is still in the primordial soul realm. However, it is the king of the multi-tailed spiritual monkeys. With the help of its bloodline, it naturally has an extra tail compared to other spiritual monkeys of the same level. The six-tailed spiritual monkey king on this Mount Wuji is indeed very strong. Not only has it reached the advanced primordial soul realm, its strength is also very strong. With the help of the other monkeys, even a peak primordial soul realm expert wouldn't dare to provoke it. It would cost a lot to obtain it. This is also the reason why this spirit vein has been abandoned and no one dares to take it. True Supremacy MO fan quickly explained. He then looked at Ziyue and said, "Sect leader Biming, we can wait here for a while. In a few days, the experts from our Celestial Spirit sect will come and clean up these multi-tailed spiritual monkeys. In addition, many formation masters and even weapon refiners from our sect will come along. We will definitely be able to set up the mountain protection formation according to your request in the shortest time possible. It's fine. If it's just a group of monkeys, it won't be a problem for me." Ziyue smiled. He then soared into the sky and quickly rushed toward the Five Peaks mountain in the distance. There were countless spirit veins in the Indigo Mountains. However, there were very few spirit veins that were above grade 5. Furthermore, spirit veins and blessed lands of this grade were usually occupied by powerful sects or powerful beasts. There were very few grade 5 spirit veins that didn't have an owner. The Five Peaks Mountain in the Indigo Mountains was considered a top-notch blessed land for any immortal magic faction or beast. Every once in a while, there would be a great battle to determine who would own it. However, in the past 1,000 years, the appearance of the multi-tailed spiritual monkeys, especially the six-tailed spiritual monkey king, made the ownership of the spirit veins uncontroversial. It had been hundreds of years since any expert dared to challenge and fight for it. Fortunately, I am wise. I travel like the wind and have excellent concealment techniques. I am also very careful when I enter and leave. Otherwise, how could I have been able to peacefully cultivate in the Five Peaks Mountain for hundreds of years under the control of the six-tailed spiritual monkey king? In the underground cave of a mountain in the middle of the Five Peaks Mountain, a figure in a black robe with a long tail peeked out from behind the black robe. His eyes were darting around, and there were 3 tufts of long hair at the corner of his mouth. There was a smug look on his face. He was indeed very smug. It was very difficult for ordinary beasts to survive in a spirit vein that had an owner. There would definitely be a huge battle. However, he was occupying an advanced grade 5 spirit vein. There was abundant spirit chi and no lack of resources. His cultivation could be said to be smooth. Naturally, he was very happy. Although he couldn't openly admit that the Five Peaks Mountain belonged to him, he didn't care. As a rat demon that had just stepped into the primordial soul realm, he was already satisfied. He still hoped that he could stay here for hundreds or thousands of years to accumulate and grow. Perhaps in the future, he could really live in this place and become the true owner of the Five Peaks Mountain. Thinking of this, he turned his tail excitedly and swung it slightly on a huge rock. Rumble! A piece of white stone fell. He took the opportunity to roll up a piece of white stone. He opened his mouth and revealed 4 hard teeth. Then, he began to devour the white stone. Soon, a look of satisfaction appeared on his face. This white stone was actually a huge spirit stone. Its grade was not low either. It was at the middle grade. The core was even at the advanced grade. It could be said that it was the thing that the rat demon liked to grind its teeth on. Boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, it felt a slight tremor. Inside the cave, pieces of spirit stones began to fall because of the tremor. What's going on? A trace of doubt could not help but flash through its lively eyes. He was very confident in his control of his strength. The swing of his tail could at most knock down a small piece of spirit stone. It would not cause such a huge vibration or even cause the cave to collapse. Roar! Faintly, he heard a furious roar from the outside world. Roar! 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 The angry roars of the spirit monkeys were sharp and ear-piercing. They rose and fell one after another, causing the cave to shake violently. Is it that group of multi-tailed spirit monkeys? It was only at this moment that it realized that this tremor was not caused by itself, but was caused by the multi-tailed spirit monkey outside. With so many multi-tailed spirit monkeys roaring at the same time, there was no lack of five-tailed spirit monkeys. These five-tailed spirit monkeys were equivalent to great demons of the primordial soul realm. In the entire Five Peaks Mountain, there were as many as 10 five-tailed spirit monkeys. At this time, almost all of them had been mobilized. Could it be that they had encountered an invasion? Chapter 809. At the thought of this, Old Shoe's lively eyes flashed with excitement. He hurriedly leaped lightly, and in a flash he rushed up to the high platform that was more than 10 meters long. Then, he shrank his body and transformed into a golden rat the size of a fist. He directly crawled out of a small hole. Although he was comfortable in the Five Peaks Mountain, he was not used to the multi-tailed spirit monkey that had been abusing him. He had long wanted to teach it a lesson if he had the chance in the future. Now that he saw an enemy invading and attacking the group of multi-tailed spirit monkeys, he naturally became interested and wanted to watch the show. Just as the golden rat that Old Shoe had transformed into walked out of the cave, there was a loud boom. A huge figure crashed down heavily. This figure's entire body was almost shattered. The 5 rows of tails spread out in all directions, and the pressure was so great that even a rock collapsed into pieces. It was a 5-tailed spirit monkey. Moreover, it was the Wu-Tong spirit monkey that was considered strong among the 5-tailed spirit monkeys and had reached the intermediate primordial soul realm. However, at this moment, it seemed to be dead. Old Shoe was a little confused. After carefully approaching, he quickly confirmed that his long-term neighbor, the Wu-Tong spirit monkey, was dead. He felt sad for a moment. After all, the two of them had been neighbors for hundreds of years. However, he quickly became cheerful. It was good that this fellow had died. He recalled that more than 100 years ago, he had once again accidentally revealed himself and was discovered by the other party. If he had not reacted quickly, he would have been torn apart by the other party. Roar! An earth-shattering roar sounded. Immediately after, a spirit monkey that was completely golden in color and had 6 rows of tails on its back appeared. At the same time, hundreds and thousands of spirit monkeys all revealed extremely ferocious expressions. Their auras overlapped as they rapidly pounced on a small figure floating in the distance. Even the 6-tailed spirit monkey king has been mobilized, and there are so many multi-tailed spirit monkeys that are at least 3-tailed and above. I remember that the last time the multi-tailed spirit monkeys were so shocked was when the poisonous dragon attacked. That poisonous dragon was a demon king at the pinnacle of the primordial soul realm. Even it had suffered greatly in the face of the multi-tailed spirit monkeys. This human can actually cause such a commotion among the multi-tailed spirit monkeys. Could it be that he is another primordial soul realm expert? Old Shoe was surprised, but his small and intelligent eyes were wide open. No, that can't be right. This human is only at the primordial spirit realm primary stage. Intermediate primordial spirit realm. You dare to barge into the core area of the Five Peaks Mountain and compete with the multi-tailed spirit monkeys with such an immortal technique? However, his expression soon changed when he noticed that the strength of Ziyue's celestial technique aura was different from what he had imagined. He was even more surprised. He dared to trespass into the spiritual land of the multi-tailed spirit monkeys with such strength? Was he seeking death? While the multi-tailed spirit monkeys loved to consume spirit fruits and spirit peaches, and were even equipped with excellent means of cultivating spirit peaches, they were equally ferocious. They could tear apart tigers and leopards and devour their flesh and blood. They were extremely murderous and were even capable of joining forces in battle. Their combat prowess and destructive power were both extremely strong. A human cultivator who was only at the intermediate primordial spirit realm. Just as it was feeling a little disappointed, it suddenly saw the human cultivator stretch out his hand and casually strike with his sword. When the sword was unleashed, it was as if the wind and clouds changed color. It was extremely fast. Boom! Countless multi-tailed spirit monkeys, including the five-tailed spirit monkeys and the six-tailed spirit monkey king, who were roaring in terror, suddenly froze in midair. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Then, with a soft sound, the flesh and blood of all the multi-tailed spirit monkeys instantly crumbled into pieces, including the 7 or 8 five-tailed spirit monkeys and the six-tailed spirit monkey king, who had reached the late primordial spirit realm. Boom, boom, boom. Endless flesh and blood fell from the sky and sprinkled all over the trees and grass. The mountain emitted a scorching aura of essence. Some of the vegetation seemed to be unable to withstand the turbulent energy and were burned alive and withered to death. These spirit monkeys were not weak. Even a drop of their blood contained a huge amount of energy. Naturally, it was not something that ordinary vegetation could withstand. How is this possible? Old Shu's eyes widened in disbelief. The human had only struck with his sword. He did not even see the image of the sword light, and yet the entire group of multi-tailed spirit monkeys was wiped out. Not a single one survived. Old Shu was stunned. What kind of shocking scene was this? It was simply unimaginable. It left a deep impression on him, and he would never forget it. The human cultivator who had attacked was naturally Ziyue. This group of multi-tailed spirit monkeys had occupied the Five Peaks Mountain for many years and had long regarded this place as their territory. They saw any foreign species that stepped into this place as their enemy. Therefore, as soon as Ziyue revealed himself, the multi-tailed spiritual monkeys attacked him crazily and tried to kill him. After he had killed several multi-tailed spirit monkeys to intimidate them, the group of monkeys seemed to have gone mad. They desperately called out to him, and countless multi-tailed spirit monkeys rushed over, including the six-tailed spirit monkey king. When he saw this, Ziyue naturally wouldn't hold back, and his sword flew out. The supreme Dao technique, the heart sword technique, flashed. With just one strike, almost all the multi-tailed spirit monkeys were killed. Faced with this, Ziyue's expression did not change. He was very calm. Although he could only unleash an attack at the level of an extreme state due to the suppression of heaven and earth, this attack at the level of an extreme state was already the strongest and most powerful attack in the world. Even if the six-tailed spirit monkey was at the peak of the primordial soul realm, it would not be able to escape from his sword, let alone the six-tailed spirit monkey that was at the late stage of the primordial soul realm, killing 1,300 multi-tailed spirit monkeys with one strike. Although these multi-tailed spirit monkeys have different strengths, it has increased my spirit power by a lot. I now have 500 million spirit power again. Ziyue glanced at his attribute panel and felt satisfied. Although 500 million spirit power was not as good as when he was at his peak, it had increased his spirit power by a lot. It had also increased his foundation and confidence. As expected of the Dark North sect leader, I thought that there would be a fierce battle to get rid of this group of multi-tailed spirit monkeys. Who would have thought that the Dark North sect leader would be able to get rid of so many multi-tailed spirit monkeys so easily? At this moment, Mo Fan, true supremacy Mo Fan, and the others quickly flew over and exclaimed. Even though I had guessed that it would not be difficult for the sect leader to get rid of these multi-tailed spirit monkeys with his strength, I did not expect it to be so easy. Jiang Taixian was also shocked. That sword strike had also stunned him. Even though he had learned from many aspects that Ziyue was actually much younger than him, It did not go against his endless admiration for Ziyue in the world of immortal spells where the strong were respected. This sword strike is nothing. Ziyue shook his head calmly. Although that sword was powerful, he had only used 10% of his strength. After all, even if he had used all his strength, he could only reach the level of an extreme state. The difference in strength was not that great. Therefore, he naturally knew what to do. It seemed that the effect was not bad. Dark North sect leader, leave the rest to us. To set up the formation, we need to observe and understand the entire Five Peaks Mountain. At the same time, we can also get rid of the remaining multi-tailed spirit monkeys. Master Calm Heart said with a smile. Ziyue's previous attack had almost killed all the multi-tailed spirit monkeys above the Golden Core realm in the entire Five Peaks Mountain. Therefore, he had the confidence to say that, at least, as long as it was not in existence above the primordial soul realm, his strength was enough to deal with it. There's no hurry. Ziyue waved his hand and said, if I don't get rid of all the small fries, how can I be at ease with you moving around here? As he said that, he swept his gaze and looked at a bush below. Oh no, I've been discovered. Old Shu shuddered and turned pale with fright. He quickly turned around and fled. His speed was really at the peak of what he could achieve. In his opinion, Ziyue was too terrifying. The powerful neighbor multi-tailed spirit monkeys that he had cursed countless times had been easily slaughtered. He did not think that he would be able to escape if he was caught. However, even though he was very fast and his body was like a phantom, and he was confident that even the six-tailed spirit monkey king at the advanced primordial soul realm would not be able to catch up with him in a short time. In Ziyue's eyes, the speed that he was so proud of was laughable. He only pointed slightly, and a ball of spiritual light shot out. Chi. In an instant, his body stiffened, and he stood still on the spot, unable to move. Ziyue then stretched out his hand, and a transparent space immediately came down from above, trapping it on the spot. Spare me, senior. I'm only a rat demon, and I'm no threat to you and the rest. If you let me go, I'll definitely leave without a word. I won't disturb you at all, and I won't dare to reveal your whereabouts or news. Old Shu screamed in horror. The golden rat's face was full of misery. Your desire to live is quite strong. Fan Qingyu chuckled and could not help but comment. Your desire to live is very strong indeed. However, what surprised me the most is that this is a rare treasure-seeking mouse. It's born with an incomparable sensitivity to treasures. It's said that wherever a treasure-seeking mouse appears, there must be a great treasure nearby. True venerate, Emo. Fan looked at the golden rat in the space and could not help but smile. Treasure-seeking mouse? The eyes of the surrounding people lit up when they heard this. Do you know if there are any great treasures in the Five Peaks Mountain? Jiang Taixian asked impatiently. Great treasures? Old Shu's face changed, and his whiskers trembled. He quickly shook his head and said, no great treasures, no great treasures. It seems like this treasure-seeking mouse is not very honest. Fan Qingyu looked at Ziyue mockingly and said, the others were all smart. They could easily tell from the other party's expression that he was lying. Tell me where the great treasures are, and you may have a chance to live. Otherwise, you'll die. Ziyue could not help but say. Even though he did not think that the treasure-seeking mouse could really find any great treasures, there was no harm in giving it a try. Great treasures. There is indeed a great treasure. Old Shu's neck shrunk, and his face was immediately filled with regret. Obviously, he was regretting that he had compromised so quickly. However, his life was more important. He could not guarantee that if he did not tell them, he would not have a chance to live. Tell me, where is it? The others immediately became excited, searching for treasures and obtaining opportunities. It could be said that almost every cultivator yearned for it. In the world of immortal spells, there were too many people who had soared to the sky and become extraordinary because of a certain opportunity or treasure. Although they were very strong and had long passed the time of rising because of treasures, they still hoped that they would have the opportunity to obtain a great treasure inheritance. At the very least, they would have more things to talk about and experience. There is a huge axe in the rock of the main peak of the Five Peaks Mountain. This huge axe is very powerful and seems to have a consciousness of its own. Whenever a cultivator approaches it, it will shoot out a sharp light to attack. Old Shoe, I've tried 100 times, and the most recent time, I only managed to get within 100 meters of the huge axe. The treasure-seeking mouse said hurriedly with a hint of fear in its eyes. Even now, when it thought about the sharp light emitted by the huge axe, it felt uncomfortable all over. Huge axe. It has a consciousness of its own. Everyone was shocked when they heard that, and a look of horror appeared on their faces. Numinous treasure? Could this so-called great treasure be the legendary numinous treasure? That was because only numinous treasures could have a consciousness of their own and actively display their power to resist cultivators from approaching. Given the strength of the treasure-hunting spirit rat, even an early-stage primordial spirit realm rat demon could not get within 100 meters of the gigantic axe. One could only imagine the grade of the gigantic axe. Even among numinous treasures, it was not considered weak. Even if it was not a superior grade numinous treasure, it was definitely at the peak of the inferior grade, or even a middle grade numinous treasure. Lead the way. Baiziua extended his hand and tapped the treasure-seeking spirit mouse. He was not afraid that the treasure-seeking spirit mouse would try to escape from him. With his speed and strength, even if the treasure-seeking mouse was at the late-stage Essence Soul realm, or even at the peak of the Essence Soul realm, he was confident that he could capture and kill the other party within a breath, let alone the fact that the treasure-seeking mouse was only at the early-stage Essence Soul realm. The treasure-seeking mouse seemed to know that as well, and it responded obediently and respectfully. Then, it led Ziue and the others and quickly rushed toward the mountain peak. This mountain peak was the most majestic and towering of the Five Peaks Mountain. It was also the tallest one. Its aura was so majestic that it seemed to be able to hold up the sky and pierce through the clouds. Under the lead of the treasure-seeking mouse, the group first flew to the mountainside and then stopped in front of a hole that was only as thick as an arm. The huge axe is 1,000 meters deep in this hole. The treasure-seeking mouse said immediately, "Are there no other holes?" Jiang Taixian asked with a darkened face. How are they going to enter a hole of this size? Although the size manipulation remarkable power was not complicated, it was not something that just anyone could learn. After all, this remarkable power did not increase a cultivator's combat strength by much. Jiang Taixian happened to be a cultivator who had not learned this remarkable power, so it was impossible for him to pass through the hole that was as thick as an arm. Chapter 8:10. Nope. This mountain is 1,000 meters deep and shockingly hard. It took me nearly half a year to dig out this small hole bit by bit. The treasure-hunting spirit mouse shook its head. Jiang Taixian was not convinced. He immediately attacked with his magic weapon. Boom! A dull sound was heard as a small hole was blasted open in the mountain. It was only 3 meters from end to end. This is the black-crimson inkstone. It's extremely hard and can't be broken with weapons. It also has the effect of blocking the detection of the primordial spirit. Even with the strength of my primordial spirit, I can't go any further than 5 meters. At this moment, Master Calmheart seemed to have discovered something. Her expression changed as she hurriedly spoke. Hearing this, the others began to probe further with their soul power. I can only reach 2 meters. Fan Qingyu spoke first. Even though she had a strong foundation and great potential, she was only at the peak of the God realm. Her soul was the weakest among them. Even Master Calmheart, who had reached the peak of the Golden Core realm, could only reach 5 meters. It was already shocking that he could reach 2 meters. 7 meters, Jiang Taixian said helplessly with a dark face. He thought he would be able to reach much deeper than Master Calmheart after he had been baptized by the heavenly tribulation. Now that he had reached the peak of the Golden Core realm and had the strength of an emperor or higher, he could only reach 2 meters deeper than Master Calmheart. I can only reach 15 meters, Master Calmheart said. True Venerate Mo Fan's expression was equally ugly. 15 meters was not a long distance. Jiang Taixian was 7 meters deep. His cultivation was so much higher than Jiang Taishuan's, and his soul had transformed into a primordial spirit. However, he could only reach twice as far as Jiang Taixian, although it was possible that the deeper he went, the stronger the spirit-forbidding spirit of the black crimson ink stone was. He still could not accept it. I went a little deeper. I reached 80 meters. Ziyue shook his head when he saw the others looking at him. The others were surprised. Ziyue's cultivation was lower than Mo Fan's, yet he could reach 80 meters deep. However, when they thought of his strength, they realized something. "How do we get in?" Jiang Taixian asked helplessly. "It's all right." Ziyue shook his head indifferently. With a wave of his hand, he took everyone into the Kunwu Golden Pagoda. With a thought, the Kunwu Golden Pagoda shrunk to the size of a speck of dust and rushed into the cave. This treasure is actually of a higher grade than that enormous axe. Old Shu was feeling a little smug. Although it had been captured, it still hoped to see Ziyue and the others suffer. Who would have thought that it would be sucked into this inexplicable treasure in the blink of an eye? Suddenly, it shuddered and was stunned. As a treasure-seeking spirit mouse, its spiritual sense towards treasure glows was extremely sharp. This was its innate talent, and also the reason why it was revered by countless cultivators in the Star Boundary. Previously, when Ziyue had not used this treasure, because it had already recognized him as its master and its spiritual energy was hidden, he did not notice it. He only instinctively felt that there should be a great treasure on him. But now that this treasure had been revealed and it was still inside the treasure, it immediately felt a difference. When it compared the treasure, it realized that this golden pagoda was of a higher grade than the giant axe it had discovered before. It was stunned at once. Of course, this Kunwu Golden Pagoda is a superior grade spirit treasure. Jiang Taixian replied with a proud face. A superior grade spirit treasure? Old Shu was stunned and looked at Ziyue with even more awe. To be able to control a superior grade spirit treasure, and most importantly, to be able to make it recognize him as its master, how amazing was such an existence. It was no wonder that it had been so easily discovered and restrained. Originally, it still wanted to find a chance to quickly escape, but now it really did not dare to, because it knew that it could not escape at all, and if it really made a move, it would definitely not have a good time. The chances of it dying were very high. The cave was deep, and there were several forks in the middle. There were many traps, up and down, left and right, and many dead ends. These were all set up by the treasure-seeking spirit mouse in the early days as a precaution. After more than 10 minutes, Ziyue and the others finally passed through and appeared in a huge cave. Even in this space, the range of my divine sense has not increased at all. Jiang Taixian sighed with emotion. Suddenly, he was stunned and looked into the depths of the cave. A ball of dim light was faintly visible, and where the dim light shone, there was a stone wall. There seemed to be some colored pictures on the stone wall, as if they were recording something. The group could not help but go forward and began to carefully observe. This seems to be some picture records left behind by the ancient human tribe in the ancient times. From the picture records, it seems to be a human tribe that originally lived here peacefully, eating raw meat and drinking blood, and hunting for a living. Suddenly, a demon god broke into their tribe, and after a fierce battle, the tribe was almost wiped out. The leader of the tribe seemed to have paid a huge price to enter a secret place, and then brought out a giant axe from the secret place. Finally, with the help of the giant axe, he killed the demon god. Master Calmheart said in surprise, "Could it be that this giant axe is the one that the leader brought out? That leader looked like a savage who drank blood. How strong could he be? How could he activate a spirit treasure?" Jiang Taixian could not help but ask. From what the treasure-hunting spirit mouse had said, they had roughly determined that the giant axe was at the level of a spirit treasure. However, it was definitely not an easy task to activate a spiritual treasure. Just the protective treasure light alone was not something that ordinary cultivators could resist. Although the treasure-hunting spirit mouse's combat power was not necessarily strong, it was a powerful demon in the early primordial soul realm. Even so, it could not get close to the spirit treasure giant axe, which showed how difficult it was. However, from the picture, the leader of the tribe was able to activate the giant axe and unleash super strong combat power, which naturally surprised him. Who said that the human tribe was weak? If you had noticed the prey that they had hunted before, you would know how terrifying they were. Among them, there were saber-toothed tigers, multi-horned beasts, black-blooded pythons, violent earth bears, three-headed dragons, and other strange beasts. The saber-toothed tigers, multi-horned beasts, and violent earth bears were all ancient strange beasts with great strength. Once they reached adulthood, the weakest of them would have the strength of a golden core realm cultivator. As for the black-blooded pythons, if you look carefully, you will see that they have 9 white lines on their bodies. That means that their bloodlines have evolved 9 times. They are comparable to cultivators at the peak of the golden core realm and can advance to the primordial soul realm at any time. As for the three-headed dragons, they're even stronger. They are natural-born, mutated divine beasts that are not weaker than real dragons. They definitely have the combat power of a primordial soul realm cultivator. With so many powerful beasts as food for the human tribe, you can imagine that their individual strength is definitely not weak. Their leader would naturally be even stronger. He might even have the combat power of a peak primordial soul realm cultivator. It is very possible that he could subdue a spirit treasure and unleash the power of the spirit treasure. As a primordial soul realm cultivator, Real Mo Fan was naturally more knowledgeable. He quickly retorted. Hearing this, Jiang Taishuan's expression changed. He realized that his knowledge was too shallow. What I want to know more is the location of the secret place that the leader entered. Since the spirit treasure giant axe appeared, there must be other treasures. Ziwa said indifferently as he looked at the treasure-hunting spirit mouse. He did not think that it would not be interested in the secret place after seeing the map. After all, the treasure-hunting spirit mouse was naturally very curious and sensitive to treasures. On top of that, it was extremely talented. It would be the easiest to find the location of the secret place. There is no harm in telling you about this secret place. It is actually on the top of this mountain, but I can't find its exact location. It is hidden in an unknown space. Without special treasures or knowing the location of the space, it is impossible to enter. Perhaps it will only reveal itself at a certain time. However, I have been here for hundreds of years, but I have never felt any spatial fluctuations. I can only vaguely sense the location closest to it with my talent. The treasure-hunting spirit mouse sneered. Is that so? Bai Ziwa nodded with a thoughtful look on his face. The location of this secret place was similar to the Dragon Palace. It was hidden in the depths of the void outside the space membrane. If it was not at a certain time, or when there was some treasure leading it, it would be impossible to find it, let alone enter it. Even if one's strength had reached the pinnacle of the primordial spirit realm, or even the pinnacle of the primordial spirit realm, and stepped into the turbulence of the void to investigate, the billions of dust particles and countless stars would not be able to pinpoint the exact location of the mystic ground, let alone enter it and obtain the treasures within. Perhaps when I break through to the spirit-severing realm, or when my cultivation of space reaches a certain level, I will be able to detect it. Ziwa thought silently. He was not in a hurry. As long as his sect was established here, no matter when this secret place appeared, it would definitely belong to him or the sect that he founded. Looking past the image, the group soon saw a giant axe standing on top of an altar. The body of the giant axe alone was 30 feet long. It was green all over, but the blade light was a little dim. There was a thick and long handle on it. It was dark red in color and was 100 feet long. The entire giant axe was majestic and huge, and it was filled with an indescribable, domineering aura. Vaguely, there were faint rays of dim light emitting from it. At this moment, they realized that the dim light they had seen before was emitted from the giant axe. This giant axe is indeed a numinous treasure. It is a middle-grade numinous treasure. Jiang Taixian exclaimed and rushed forward impatiently. Buzz. Almost at the moment when he got close, the giant axe shone brightly and a strong oppressive force immediately descended. The terrifying pressure practically pressed him down in an instant. Hee, the further you go, the greater the pressure. I, old Shu, am in the primordial soul realm, but I have only recently reached the 100-meter mark, let alone you a golden core realm cultivator. The treasure-hunting spiritual mouse laughed and gloated. This is the pressure of a numinous treasure. The stronger one's spiritual will, the stronger their resistance. With the strength of this numinous treasure, even a cultivator in the primordial soul realm in the late stage would find it difficult to get close to it, let alone a cultivator in the early stage of the primordial soul realm. As he said that, Mo Fan looked at Ziyue with a strange gaze, except for such a freak. Even if Ziyue's immortal spell realm was lower than his, he believed that Ziyue would definitely be able to get close to the giant axe, intimidate the weapon spirit of the giant axe, and take it down. Thinking of this, he was filled with endless emotions. Perhaps this was the son of Providence, a person with great fortune. Otherwise, why would the Five Peaks Mountain have stood here for so many years without anyone thinking of taking over this place and making it their base? Why would the group of multi-tailed spiritual monkeys have occupied this place for thousands of years without discovering this numinous treasure, giant axe? And yet, Fang Xingjian found this place with the help of the treasure-hunting spiritual mouse as soon as he arrived. It was not that he did not have any greed in his heart. He wanted to inform the sect and the sect master. But when he thought of Ziyue's strength, he felt deeply powerless and completely crushed that trace of greed, especially the attack that Ziyue had made previously. Although its destructive power was still at the level of the Supreme Realm, its area of effect was so large that even their sect master would not be able to do it. In other words, if Fang Xingjian could break through the suppression of the Great Tao, his actual combat strength would surpass their sect master Zhou Gudong's. Such an existence was too terrifying. In addition, their sect master had specially warned him before, so he naturally did not dare to act rashly. You can all try. The numinous treasure has a spirit. If you're chosen by the weapon spirit of the numinous treasure, even if you're just an ordinary person, you will be able to get close and pick up this giant axe. Ziyue said with a smile. Sect Master, what do you mean? Master Jingxin's heart skipped a beat. Then, if I am also fated, this numinous treasure will belong to Mo Fan's true supremacy was also surprised. You can take it. Ziyue smiled faintly and looked slightly at Fan Qingyu. Numinous treasures had spirits, and numinous treasures could communicate with each other. Although the consciousness of the giant axe was not as agile as the weapon spirit of the Kunwa Golden Pagoda, it already had basic intelligence. At this moment, he had said this because the weapon spirit of the Kunwa Golden Pagoda had already told him that the weapon spirit of the giant axe had taken a liking to Fan Qingyu and wanted to recognize her as its master. Since that was the case, he was naturally willing to encourage them to give it a try. However, on second thought, it was normal. Fan Qingyu's talent was already peerless. If one were to calculate it carefully, it was far superior to Ziyue's own talent. In addition, now that her Dao body had reached the perfection stage, her every move was extraordinary and could trigger the great Dao of heaven and earth. She could be called the great Dao's child, the darling of heaven and earth. It was very normal that the weapon spirit of the giant axe would take a liking to her. Great, then let's give it a try. Mo Fan's true supremacy was overjoyed. He took a deep breath and hurriedly stepped forward carefully. He was already looking forward to it. Chapter 811. Jiang Taixian, on the other hand, could only grimace and look dejected. His previous attempt had already proven that the weapon spirit of the giant axe did not approve of him. When the pressure of the treasure landed on his body, he immediately fell to the ground with his face covered in dust. Naturally, he was not in a good mood. Mo Fan slowly walked forward and stepped into the range of the treasure in the next moment. Buzz! In an instant, The giant axe glowed brightly, and a terrifying pressure fell on him. Not only did it affect his body, but it also affected his mind. Umph! Mo Fan's expression froze. He harumphed coldly and took it head-on. The pressure of the weapon spirit of the giant axe might be very useful to Jiang Taixian, but he was a cultivator at the peak of the intermediate stage of the primordial soul realm. His primordial soul had undergone the baptism of the lightning tribulation and was extraordinary. Naturally, his endurance was much higher than the opponent's. Therefore, when the pressure suddenly fell on him, his expression did not change as he continued to move forward. 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters. The pressure of the weapon spirit was more than 300 meters wide, but Mo Fan's true supremacy kept moving forward without stopping. He quickly crossed 100 meters, 200 meters, and then surpassed the limit of the treasure-seeking spirit mouse. He was only 100 meters away from the giant axe. What a powerful aura! This pressure is like an ultimate primordial soul realm cultivator releasing all of his aura to target me. It makes every step extremely difficult. Mo Fan's true supremacy exclaimed. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. Even he felt that this kind of pressure was difficult to bear. Fortunately, he was still calm. He knew that it was not easy to obtain the treasure. Therefore, he maintained the flow of his primordial soul to resist the pressure. 80 meters, 60 meters, 40 meters, the closer he got, the more terrifying the pressure became. At this moment, he felt as if the whole world was against him. The closer he got, the stronger the pressure became. Every step he took was difficult. Charge! Mo Fan's true highness let out a furious roar. He fully unleashed his strength and used all kinds of spells to advance another 20 meters. However, he was running out of energy by then. He was staggering as he moved forward. Huff, huff. It's too difficult. Even with my strength and the strength of my primordial spirit, I can only get within 20 meters of it. Any closer, and I'll be completely helpless. Mo Fan's true highness panted heavily. He quickly withdrew from the area where the treasure was located with a displeased look. Furthermore, I have a feeling that if I really step within 10 meters of that spiritual treasure, that giant axe will automatically activate its protective profound light, which can pose a huge threat to me. Thinking of this, he could not help but shake his head. If he gave it his all, he might be able to get close to the numinous treasure giant axe. He might even be able to grasp the numinous treasure and refine it. However, spirit treasures had spirits. If they were unwilling to recognize a person as their master, they would resist violently. He estimated that if he came within 10 meters of the giant axe, the tool spirit of the giant axe would even activate its main body and launch a thunderous attack. As for the thunderous attack of a middle-grade numinous treasure, even if there was no cultivator controlling it, it was still extremely powerful. It was not something he could withstand. Therefore, under that unseen sense of danger, he finally gave up and retreated. Let me try. Seeing this, Master Jingxin let out a sigh of relief and hurriedly said. He also knew that spirit treasures had spirits. If he could get the other party's approval, even a mortal could refine the spirit treasure and use it. However, he knew very well that it was a very slim possibility. Even Mo Fan's true highness had not succeeded. The chances of him succeeding were even lower. However, with the opportunity in front of him, how could he be satisfied if he did not try? Therefore, he hurriedly went forward and gathered his aura and began to move forward. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Compared to Mo Fan's true highness, his strength was a lot weaker. He only moved forward 90 meters before retreating, panting heavily. The pressure of this numinous treasure is indeed too strong. It's not something we can peek at. Master Jingxin smiled helplessly, but he was not disappointed. He already knew that his chances of obtaining the numinous treasure were not high, so he was naturally much calmer. In his opinion, only Taoist North Mingzue had full confidence in subduing this numinous treasure. I wasn't ready just now. Let me try again. I don't believe that I can't go farther than Master Jingxin. Seeing that Master Calmheart had also gone 90 meters deep, Jiang Taixian could not help but grumble aloud. Master Calm Heart. He did not expect the numinous treasure to suddenly unleash its pressure. Otherwise, he would not have been knocked down as soon as he stepped into the range of the numinous treasure. Then, he began to move forward while staring at the pressure. This time, he was holding back his strength, so he used all his strength at the beginning and raised his aura to the peak to resist the pressure with all his might. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters. Soon, he reached a distance of 100 meters, and then after that, it became difficult for him to walk. Finally, he walked 190 meters before he could no longer continue and turned back. I told you, with my strength, it is impossible for me to only take 1 step. 190 meters is more than double the distance Master Jingxin has walked. Jiang Taixian panted slightly and said proudly. Seeing this, the treasure-hunting spiritual mouse, old Shu, could not help but look at him again. It should be noted that even it had tried its best to walk only 200 meters, which was only a dozen meters more than Jiang Taixian. However, one of them had already reached the early stage of the primordial soul realm, while the other was only at the peak of the golden core realm. The difference in strength was huge. It seems that among us, only sect leader North Ming has a chance of obtaining this numinous treasure. True Venerate Mo Fan looked at Ziyue and said emotionally, "Of course, Senior North Ming is an ultimate realm expert. The pressure of a mere middle-grade numinous treasure may be able to stop us, but it definitely can't stop Senior." Jiang Taixian hurriedly replied with a face full of pride. Since Bai Ziyue had saved him when he was overcoming the heavenly tribulation, he'd made the decision to swear loyalty and follow Bai Ziyue's lead. Now that true Venerate Mo Fan was praising Ziyue, he was naturally happy and proud. "Qingyu, you should go and try too." Ziyue looked at Fan Qingyu and said with a smile, "Me? I can't. Even Marshal Uncle Mo Fan and Master Jingxin can't get close to it, let alone me." Fan Qingyu was startled when she heard this, and quickly waved her hand. "Give it a try. Maybe this numinous treasure will take a fancy to you?" Ziyue said with a faint smile. "How is that possible?" Fan Qingyu hurriedly shook her head. After thinking for a while, she finally compromised and said coquettishly, "You just want to see me make a fool of myself, right?" Then, with a stretch of his hand, a celestial lotus was summoned and floated above her head. Her body was overflowing with light, like a fairy descending to the mortal world. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Following it, the heavens and earth changed all of a sudden, as if Buddhas were playing music and deities were beating drums. The rules of the heavens and earth were revealed in front of everyone like thin ropes. The Tao flesh was formed naturally, and the rules of Tao were revealed. It was the first time Fan Qingyu had displayed her Tao flesh after achieving the greater success stage. It had triggered a rare phenomenon and caused the heavens and earth to chime. Following it, she carefully took the first step, followed by the second step, the third step. A trace of surprise appeared on her face almost immediately. It was easy. She felt relaxed. There was no pressure or burden. It felt like she was walking on a small road in the countryside, relaxed and natural. She soon surpassed the 90-meter distance that Master Jingxin had covered. She continued to move forward and reached the 100-meter mark. How is this possible? Could it be that her soul's endurance is stronger than ours? Master Jingxin and the others were dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Even the weakest among them was at the peak golden core realm. Their strength was not unparalleled, but they were definitely stronger than Fan Qingyu, who was only at the peak divine realm. In the end, not only did she have an easy time, she even surpassed Master Jingxin and reached the 100-meter mark. Could it be? The few of them were extremely strong, and their thoughts were quick. They immediately came up with a guess. The spiritual treasure had recognized her as its master. Could it be that Fan Qingyu had an easy time because the spiritual treasure had already decided to recognize her as its master? Senior Baiming, did you already know? Jiang Taixian asked in confusion. Mo Fan also wore a concerned look. He obviously wanted to know the answer too. Ziyue smiled without saying a word. Fan Qingyu immediately realized something even if she was slow. She immediately wore a surprised and joyful look. But very quickly, her footsteps paused again, and she actually slowly turned back. What's wrong? Seeing this, Bai Ziyue quickly went forward and asked, the spiritual treasure should belong to you. I don't want it. Fan Qingyu shook her head and said, is there a need to draw such a clear line between you and me? Ziyue frowned and said, besides, the spiritual treasure has a spirit. It's its freedom to choose who its master is. Now, the spiritual treasure of the giant axe obviously recognizes you as its master. Only you can completely refine the giant axe and unleash its power. But Fan Qingyu was about to say more, but Ziyue quickly interrupted her and said, that's enough, no more buts. This spirit treasure has a spirit, so it's their instinct to choose its owner. Not to mention that this giant axe's spirit has already begun to awaken its wisdom. When it realizes that you have a natural Taoist body, it naturally knows what to choose. But it's not certain if the spiritual treasure will really recognize me as its master. What if there are any unexpected changes or dangers? Fan Qingyu said hesitantly. There won't be any danger. Ziyue smiled and shook his head. However, after thinking for a while, he said, if you're really worried, I'll be right behind you. If there are any unexpected changes, I'll be the first to take action. Hearing this, she nodded obediently and once again walked towards the direction of the spirit treasure giant axe. Bai Ziyue, on the other hand, followed behind him with an indifferent expression. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Unlike Fan Qingyu, who felt relaxed, Bai Ziyue also felt a wave of pressure. Even though this pressure was nothing to him at his current level of strength. 100 steps, 120 steps, 150 steps. Bai Ziyue had a calm expression on his face, as though the suppressive force couldn't affect his emotions at all. This was actually normal. Although his cultivation level was low, at the mid-stage of the primordial spirit realm, he was not as strong as real Mo Fan, who was at the peak of the mid-stage of the primordial spirit realm. However, with his current strength, he could easily resist the pressure of the spiritual treasure. Not to mention, he was one of the few cultivators in the world who had a perfect soul and a golden primordial spirit. His resistance to the pressure was even stronger. Therefore, compared to Fan Qingyu's relaxed state, Bai Ziyue was also very calm. 200 meters, 230 meters, 260 meters soon, the two of them stepped in the area that was only 50 meters away from the giant axe. The suppressive force was so strong that even Bai Ziyue felt a little uncomfortable. Just as he was about to use some tricks, the Kunwu golden pagoda on his body suddenly shook slightly and quickly blocked the pressure that was enveloping the area. Thus, the two of them successfully got within 10 meters of the giant axe. Buzz! Suddenly, a stream of light flashed from the giant axe spiritual treasure, and a stream of light quickly rushed out. This stream of light was the consciousness core of the giant axe spiritual treasure. Once the consciousness core was refined, one would be able to control the spiritual treasure almost immediately and use it as one's own arm. This, Fan Qingyu was a little hesitant as she looked at Z. Hurry up and refine it. Don't worry about me. I already have a spiritual treasure. I don't need one more. If I really needed a spiritual treasure, I wouldn't have exchanged the demonic saber with your sect leader, Zhou Gadong. Not to mention, with my skills, it doesn't make much of a difference whether I have a spiritual treasure or not. Ziyue comforted her. All right then. Fan Qingyu hesitated for a moment, but her expression quickly became determined. Then, with a thought, she pointed out a soul mark and placed it on the consciousness core of the spiritual treasure. Almost instantly, Fan Qingyu felt a connection between herself and the giant axe. It was as if with a thought, he could activate the giant axe spiritual treasure and release a terrifying power. At this moment, Fan Qingyu seemed to have come to her senses. She asked in surprise, "Did I just refine this spiritual treasure giant axe?" It was unbelievably smooth. Yes, you refined it. Now you can freely activate the giant axe spiritual treasure and take it away. Ziyue explained with a smile. This spiritual treasure automatically recognized its owner. It was completely different from refining it with one's blood or other forceful means. Not only was it extremely fast, but there was no need for any special means. One could release a power with one's mind. Chapter 8:12. Ziyue knew this very well because he had experienced it before. Fan Qingyu had never controlled a spiritual treasure before, but she quickly understood the situation through the weapon spirit of the giant axe. She waved her hand, and the giant axe shone brightly. Then it shrunk rapidly to the size of a palm, and she held it in her hand. This spiritual treasure is a middle-grade spiritual treasure called the Heaven Punishment Axe. It can punish on behalf of the heavens and is extremely powerful. My current cultivation level is still very low, and I can only barely activate it. However, the power of its attack is already comparable to the full power attack of a Golden Core Emperor. If I break through to the primordial soul realm, I can even use this Heaven Punishment Axe to break through the suppression of the heavens and earth and unleash an attack that surpasses the extreme state. Fan Qingyu's face revealed a hint of surprise as she spoke excitedly. The power of this spiritual treasure had indeed shocked her. It had allowed her combat strength to soar by more than a few levels. Furthermore, this was not the full power of the Heaven Punishment Axe. Due to the restriction of her strength, she could only unleash an attack of this level. If she reached the primordial soul realm, she might even be able to unleash an attack that surpasses the extreme state. What if she became stronger? How strong would the ultimate power of the Heaven Punishment Axe be? Everyone was shocked. True venerated Mo Fan's face was even more serious. He could not help but ask, this Heaven Punishment Axe can break through the suppression of the Great Path and allow a primordial soul realm cultivator to unleash an attack that surpasses the extreme state. The extreme state was the seal of the astral world and the suppression of the Great Path. No matter how talented a cultivator was, as long as he had not broken through to the spirit-severing stage or created a heaven-breaking Dao spell, he would not be able to unleash an attack that surpassed the limit. For example, Ziyue could already unleash an attack of the extreme state when he was in the early stage of the primordial soul realm. However, now that he had broken through to the middle stage of the primordial soul realm, even if his destructive power, attack range, and attack speed were much stronger, the actual power that he could unleash was still at the extreme state. This was because it was sealed by the heavens and earth and suppressed by the Great Path. However, this Heaven Punishment Axe could actually help a cultivator break through the seal. Naturally, he was shocked. That's right. That's what the Heaven Punishment Weapon Spirit said. Fan Qingyu nodded quickly. This is the difference between an offensive spiritual treasure and an auxiliary spiritual treasure. Offensive spiritual treasures contain the power of Tao law of destruction. When attacking, it could naturally shatter everything. On the other hand, support-type numinous treasures were mainly support-type. The power of the Tao laws that they contained was also mainly support-type. Their offensive power was not strong, so naturally, they were not very useful in breaking the seal of the world. The Heaven Punisher Axe was an offensive-type numinous treasure. Furthermore, the Tao laws it contained were much more powerful. That was why it could break through the spatial seal and the suppression of the great Tao. This was also the reason why many Lameters yearned for a spiritual treasure. This is because only by borrowing the power of numinous treasures can they break through the seal of heaven and earth and the suppression of the great Tao, and unleash an attack that surpasses the limits of the extreme realm. Ziyue explained after learning about it through the artifact spirit of the Kunwu Golden Pagoda. Only then did the others come to a sudden realization, revealing expressions of understanding. He also gained a new understanding of the use of spiritual treasures. Fan Qingyu kept the spiritual treasure into her body. Apart from the sacrificial altar, there was nothing else in the cave. Thus, the group quickly returned to where they came from. Senior, since you have already obtained the treasure, can you let me go now? The treasure-hunting spiritual mouse, Old Shu, asked as he looked at Ziyue cautiously. As you wish, you may leave now. Ziyue fell silent for a moment, then smiled and said, Senior Baiming, Sect Leader Baiming, Jiang Taixin and Master Jingxin were anxious. Even true supremacy MO Fan opened his mouth, wanting to speak. A treasure-hunting spiritual mouse whose strength had reached the initial stage of the primordial spirit realm was extremely valuable. Its innate ability to search for treasures was extremely strong. Once subdued, it would bring great benefits. For example, if it were not for this treasure-hunting spiritual mouse, no one would be able to find the spiritual treasure that Fan Qingyu had obtained this time, even after hundreds or thousands of years. Thus, its value is obvious. Letting Fan Qingyu go was equivalent to letting go of a treasure mountain. Naturally, they felt that it was a pity. Even though this had nothing to do with them, they still felt sorry for Ziyue. "It's all right," Ziyue said as he waved his hand. The treasure-hunting spiritual mouse was indeed very valuable. Not only was it not weak, but it was also very talented. It was an excellent helper when searching for treasures. If he could keep it by his side, the benefits would be great. It was equivalent to obtaining a huge treasure mountain. However, Fan Qingyu did not have any grudges with him. He had been obedient along the way and had even told him the location of the treasure in the secret realm. Naturally, he would not make things difficult for him. "Thank you, Senior. Thank you." Old Shu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed and left quickly. As he ran, he kept looking back, afraid that Ziyue would go back on his words and capture him again. It was only when the distance between the two of them had exceeded 10,000 meters that it unleashed its maximum speed and quickly left. All right, the threat of the multi-tailed spiritual monkey has been dealt with. There are no more powerful beasts on the Five Peaks Mountain. Next, let's start to measure the foundation and set up the formation. As he spoke, Baiziyue's divine consciousness spread out with a thought. A large area of the surrounding area was covered by his divine sense. Everything in this area, whether it was the demonic beasts, the exotic flowers and herbs, or the underground spiritual veins, were all under his control. Ziyue was also a formation master. He was quite familiar with the usage of formations. He decided to do it himself to speed up the process. All right, let's get started. The Five Peaks Mountain isn't small. It has been abandoned for years. Even though the quality of the spiritual veins isn't low, the foundation is already messed up. We need to sort it out. Master Calmheart and True Highness Mo Fan nodded. They then went somewhere else to measure the foundation. If I'm going to be involved in setting up the formation, my strength as a third-grade formation master is too low. I need to improve it. Ziyue fell into deep thought while he was sorting out the formation. With a thought, his gaze landed on the formation Dao inheritance he had obtained by chance, the Great Way Formation Canon. In fact, he had spent some time cultivating and studying the Great Sylvan Array Codex, and he had already cultivated it to 87% of the uninitiated level. Now he was fully immersed in it. He used the time he had to comprehend the Dao, the Book of the Dao, the Law Cultivation Room in the Kunlun Golden Pagoda, and the powerful characteristics of his golden soul to cultivate it. His progress was even more shocking. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. In just a few hundred breaths' time, he had managed to learn the basics of the Formation Dao inheritance. The Great Valley Formation Canon is comparable to the Formation Dao inheritance of a Supreme Realm expert. Since I've already cultivated it to the beginner level, let's see how much this Formation Dao inheritance can improve my Formation Dao skills. Ziyue was looking forward to it. His eyes flickered as he looked at the attributes panel. Spend 80 million soul energy to improve the Great Valley Formation Canon from the beginner level to the lesser level. Upgrade. Ziyue chose to upgrade it without much hesitation. Although the Formation Dao inheritance consumed a lot of soul energy, it was much more worth it compared to the time and energy required to cultivate at the same level. Naturally, he didn't mind. In the blink of an eye, countless information about the Great Ways Array scriptures, all kinds of knowledge about array formations, and even information about array diagrams, understanding of array formations, organizing a foundation, observing the terrain, setting up of array formations, forging of array flags, and array discs. All kinds of information about array formations flowed rapidly in his mind. In a short time, he absorbed and converted all of it into one. It seemed to have become an instinct, allowing his understanding of formation Tao to reach an extremely profound level. I'm a fourth-grade formation master now, and an advanced fourth-grade formation master at that. I've already surpassed Master Comhart's formation Tao skills. With my current formation Tao skills, it's much easier for me to sort out foundation Qi and observe the flow of spirit Qi in the spirit veins. I can save a lot of time, but it's still not enough. Ziyue was overjoyed. An advanced fourth-grade formation master had a very high status in the world of immortal arts. They were known as formation masters and held important positions in any sect. But he wasn't satisfied. I'll spend 480 million soul energy to upgrade the Great Valley Formation Canon from initial mastery to full mastery. Upgrade. At the same time that Bai Ziyue chose to upgrade, countless pieces of information regarding array, Tao, poured into his mind. It was as if he had truly gone through thousands of years of arduous cultivation. He completely understood the entire Great Sylvan Array tome and understood it like the back of his hand. Most importantly, his formation Tao skills were greatly improved as a result. Peak of advanced 5th grade. Now, my formation Tao skills have reached the peak of advanced 5th grade. He was only one step away from advancing further and reaching rank 6. A 4th grade formation master was known as a formation master, a 5th grade formation grandmaster, and a 6th grade formation master was known as the formation god, a one-of-a-kind existence in the world. At least in the star realm, there was no one who'd improve their formation Tao skills to the 6th grade. Therefore, it was easy to imagine how precious it was. Besides, even formation grandmasters could be worlds apart in terms of formation Tao skills. Take Mo Fan, for example. Although he's also a formation Tao grandmaster, he's only a 5th grade formation master at the beginning. He's several times weaker than me, a 5th grade formation master at the peak of advanced 5th grade. It's not just a method of setting up a formation. Measuring and sorting out foundation Qi, observing the flow of mountains and rivers, the application and understanding of formations, the method of refining formation flags and formation discs. He's much better in every aspect. Ziyue then went to measure the land and sort out the foundation Qi. His speed was much faster than before. With a sweep of his consciousness and a thought, the foundation Qi became stable and orderly after he sorted it out. Then, with a flash of his figure, he appeared in another direction and started his operation again. Half an hour later, he'd swept through the 5 Peaks mountain, which would have taken him at least 3 days to complete the measurement. Then, he began to set up the formation directly. Fortunately, Ziyue had expected this and had prepared enough materials. Although some of the formation flags and formation discs needed to be refined and were relatively short, he could still make some simple arrangements first. The 9 rotation stars spirit formation and the 9 extremes mountain protecting formation are both ancient formations with boundless power. Moreover, the 2 formations are very compatible and have the effect of complementing each other. Once completed, their power may not be weaker than a 6th grade formation array. However, the terrain of my 5 Peaks mountain spiritual land coincides with the 5 elements of heaven and earth. If I set up a set of 5 elements formation with the 5 Peaks as the foundation, it'll be more effective. However, if I want to add a 5 elements formation, it must be compatible with the original 9 rotation star spirit formation and the 9 extremes mountain protecting formation. This isn't an easy task. Ziyue combined the 5 Peaks mountain spiritual land and thought silently. Soon his eyes lit up. Got it. The great 5 elements celestial spirit transformation formation. This formation could rely on the terrain of the 5 Peaks mountain to amplify the advantage of the spiritual veins, transform the spiritual energy of the heavens and the earth into 5 elements celestial spirit Qi, and irrigate all living things, causing dense 5 elements celestial spirit Qi to spread wherever the formation enveloped. And it could even merge with the other 2 great formations to complement each other and fuse into one. If the formation is completed, it can even be upgraded to a 6th grade formation array when the 3 formations are combined into one. By then, it'll definitely be able to make my mountain gate secure and last forever. Ziyue was a little excited. This was also the reason why he could think of such a suitable formation after he became an advanced 5th grade formation grandmaster and had a rich knowledge of formations. Otherwise, he would have to test the formations one by one. Not only would it be time-consuming, the effect of the formation wouldn't be good after it was completed. It was not easy to set up a 6th grade formation array. The only problem is that the materials needed to set up a 6th grade formation array that combines 3 formations into one is too much. The original 2 formations required more than 123,600 array bases. With the addition of the Great 5 Forms Celestial Spirit Transformation Formation, the number of array bases has increased by a large margin, directly soaring to 200,000. Ziyue couldn't help but frown slightly. The formation base was the real foundation of a formation array. However, refining the array foundation required time. Even if he had the strength of an advanced 5th grade formation grandmaster and the speed of refining the formation base was incomparably fast, it was still not something that could be done in a short time. Fortunately, there's still Master Jingxin and Mo Fan. Their formation Dao strength is not weak, and they have a lot of formation-based materials or formation bases that have been refined long ago. Not to mention, there will soon be a group of formation masters and weapon refiners in the Celestial Spirit sect. I believe that by then, the speed of refining the formation base will be faster. Ziyue thought silently and secretly let out a sigh of relief. As one of the top 10 immortal magic forces in the world, the Celestial Spirit sect was one of the top 2 super sects in the Firmament territory. Its foundation was very deep, and the number of formation bases in the Celestial Spirit sect must be very large. Therefore, he wasn't too worried. Chapter 8:13. On the second day, a group of cultivators arrived in a grandiose fashion. The leader was the elder of the Celestial Spirit sect, Taoist Clear Spring, whom Ziyue had met once before. In addition, there was a group of hundreds of formation masters and weapon forgers, led by Zhang Naixing, an advanced 4th grade formation master, and Zhou Yao, an advanced 4th grade weapon forger. It was also worth mentioning that the Celestial Spirit sect had sent dozens of powerful cultivators to guard the surroundings in order to protect the safety of this place. It was obvious that the Celestial Spirit sect attached great importance to Ziyue. Sect leader Baiming, how have you been? This time, as soon as our sect leader returned to the sect, the first thing he did was to assign people according to your previous suggestion. Not only did he send over almost all the idle formation masters and weapon forgers, but he also brought over all the materials that sect leader Baiming needed to set up the formation. This is enough for sect leader Baiming to set up the protective mountain formation successfully. Taoist Clear Spring looked at Ziyue and said with a laugh, "Thank you, sect leader Zhou and Taoist Clear Spring." Ziyue hurriedly bowed and said gratefully, "By the way, there are many multi-tailed spiritual monkeys in the 5 Peaks Mountain. This time, I came to help you drive these multi-tailed spiritual monkeys out." Why? Taoist Clear Spring looked at the 5 Peaks Mountain not far away and could not help but be surprised. Jiang Taixian, who was following closely behind Ziyue, immediately showed a smug and proud expression when he heard this. He said, "Senior, you don't have to worry about this. That group of multi-tailed spiritual monkeys, whether they were 4-tailed, 5-tailed, or 6-tailed, have all been killed by our sect leader. Our sect master has only used one move from start to finish." Jiang Taishuan's pride was indescribable. Of course, he was smart enough not to reveal that he had encountered a treasure-seeking spiritual mouse in the early stage of the primordial soul realm, and that he had found a middle-grade spiritual treasure with the help of the treasure-seeking spiritual mouse. Otherwise, once the news was leaked, it would definitely cause a commotion with too many people talking. On top of that, Ziyue had already warned Mo Fan about it. He believed Mo Fan's true highness would not leak the information to the public. He killed it in one move. Taoist Clear Spring was taken aback. In his surprise, he could not help but glance at Ziyue. Then, he quickly revealed an expression of relief and said with a bitter smile, "That's normal. With the strength of the head of the North Nether sect, let alone a six-tailed monkey, even a seven-tailed monkey would find it difficult to withstand a single move." He was well aware of Zu's strength. He was an existence that could rival their sect leader. Naturally, he would not suspect anything. With the arrival of the Formation Masters and Weapon Forgers led by Daoist Clear Spring, the speed of setting up the formation in the entire Five Peaks mountain immediately sped up. The group of people continued to refine the formation flags and foundations under Mo Fan's guidance. They quickly set up the formation under Zu's guidance and Master Jingxin's guidance. It was also at this time that the group of people discovered that Zu's array Dao strength was countless times more powerful than they imagined. Mo Fan, in particular, thought that his strength as a fifth-grade formation grandmaster was one of the best in the entire firmament territory. He should be the one in charge of setting up the formation this time. However, after interacting with Ziyue, especially the formation skills that Ziyue casually revealed and the understanding of formation Dao that he casually mentioned, it was all extremely exquisite and beyond his imagination. It also immediately made him understand that Mo Fan's array Dao strength was even stronger and more terrifying than his. Therefore, he was completely convinced and no longer disobeyed Ziyue's instructions. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. During this period, the entire Five Peaks mountain had been busy. In order to speed up the progress of setting up the formation and to let the disciples grow and practice through this formation, Ziyue even summoned all the disciples of the Biming sect in the North Nether Cave and assigned them to the Formation Masters and Weapon Forgers of the Celestial Spirit sect to learn and practice. Due to Bai Ziyue's array Dao prowess and the supreme prestige of a Supreme Realm expert, the disciples of the Heavenly Spirit sect did not dare to neglect him. Although they did not teach him everything they knew, they were not stingy with their guidance to the North Nether sect disciples. Thus, 3 months later, as Ziyue and the Formation Masters continued to set up the formation flags and formation discs were constantly falling down one after another. The entire formation was finally close to perfection. The position of the last formation flag should be here. Ziyue calculated the direction of the entire formation, which was compatible with the earth chi of the entire spirit vein. He conveniently pointed at the formation flag and placed it in the depths of a void. The world instantly became quiet. The earth chi in the depths of the earth chi seemed to have become unobstructed. In this way, the 9 Revolution Star Spirit Transformation Formation, the 9 Extremes Mountain Protection Formation, and the Great 5 Forms Celestial Spirit Transformation Formation are finally set up by me. Now, I'm only one step away. As long as I place the formation, the 3-in-1 formation can be activated immediately. At that time, I will be able to gather spirit chi, defend, and destroy the enemy. I believe that even if a mighty, immortal path expert of the spirit severing stage comes, he will have to put in a lot of effort to break the formation. If there's someone operating and guarding the formation, there's even a possibility of killing such an existence. Ziyue's figure floated in mid-air, looking at the formation that he had set up in various parts of the Five Peaks Mountain Spirit Land with satisfaction. With his array Dao strength, it was relatively easy to set up a 5th-grade formation. However, this 3-in-1 formation was comparable to a 6th-grade formation. Even he had spent a lot of time and energy, but it had also benefited him greatly. Not only had he completely stabilized his strength as an advanced 5th-grade formation master, but he had also taken a step further, peeking into the mysteries of a 6th-grade formation master. If he continued like this, even if he didn't have a higher level of array Dao inheritance, he was confident that he could advance his array Dao strength and become a grade 6 array master after spending some time. Of course, in addition to Ziyue, the other formation masters had also made great progress. Mo Fan's true venerate strength was originally a 5th-grade formation master. After setting up the formation this time, coupled with Ziyue's constant guidance, he was confident that he could improve further and become an intermediate 5th-grade formation master in a few years. Although it was only a small promotion, It had to be known that for formation masters, especially those who had reached the 5th grade, every promotion was extremely difficult. The possibility of him improving further was already a monstrous opportunity, which made him extremely excited. In addition to him, Master Jingxin's improvement was even greater. She had directly advanced from an advanced 4th grade formation master to a beginner 5th grade formation master, leaping from formation master to a formation grandmaster. Therefore, when Ziwe showed a hint of willingness, he followed the good advice and directly joined the Baiming sect founded by Ziwe, becoming the first formation grandmaster of the Baiming sect. In addition, many formation masters of the Celestial Spirit sect had also been promoted, and most of their formation Dao strength had increased. This time, setting up the formation was a huge opportunity for all the formation masters, and almost everyone had grown as a result. Even in the Baiming sect founded by Ziwe, there was a person who showed extraordinary talent in formation Dao. In a short period of time, he went from a person who knew nothing about formation Dao to a beginner 2nd grade formation master. His potential was amazing. Now, he had been accepted as a disciple by Master Jingxin and was specially taught by her. Let's begin the last step. Then, Ziwe turned his hand and immediately took out a black bead. This black bead was the Grotto Heaven treasure that Ziwe had obtained in the early days, the Baiming Grotto Heaven. The Baiming Grotto Heaven was not very useful to the current Ziwe, but it was very suitable to be used as the formation eye. After all, its grade had been refined by him and filled with countless spiritual meridians, and it had reached a very high level, enough to be used as the formation eye to suppress the entire formation. Moreover, the Baiming Grotto Heaven has the corpse of a true dragon guarding it. With the protection of the true dragon Qi, it might be able to bring out unexpected changes in the entire formation. Ziwe thought to himself, and then pressed his hand, placing the Baiming Grotto Heaven in the center of the formation eye. Buzz! When the formation was completed, the color of heaven and earth changed. The entire 5 Peaks spiritual land suddenly moved without any wind. Endless spiritual Qi of heaven and earth moved rapidly, and the heavens and earth suddenly emitted endless rays of light. Formation flags and formation plates were connected, covering an area of a few hundred miles. At this moment, from the outside, the 5 Peaks spiritual land seemed to have disappeared, and no one could see what was going on inside. Then, Ziwe suddenly raised his head and felt a trace of an inexplicable aura coming down from the 9 heavens, sprinkling directly on the formation. It was the power of the stars from the 9 heavens, outside of the star realm, being gathered and drawn down. The 3 formations become one formation rotated, and the endless power of the stars was quickly converted into endless vitality, sprinkling all over the 5 Peaks spiritual land. In the blink of an eye, Ziwe felt that the already rich spiritual Qi of heaven and earth in the 5 Peaks spiritual land became even richer. Originally, the spiritual Qi of heaven and earth in the surroundings, if calculated in terms of spirit stones, should add up to about 7 million upper spirit stones. However, as the power of the stars fell and the endless spiritual energy was converted, the spiritual Qi of heaven and earth in the surroundings soared to 8 million upper spirit stones, 9 million upper spirit stones, and then 10 million upper spirit stones. Almost at every moment, Ziwe could feel that the spiritual Qi of heaven and earth in the surroundings was becoming richer and richer. The flowers, plants, trees, and all kinds of living things in the 5 Peaks spiritual land grew more vigorous and full of vitality as the spiritual Qi increased. Because of this, strange phenomena appeared in the heavens and earth. There was a faint, auspicious light sprinkling down, and the spiritual Qi gathered in the dark clouds and formed raindrops that dripped down. The raindrops were the spiritual water of heaven and earth formed by the extremely rich spiritual Qi. There were also spiritual Qi flowers and birds flying in the void, and spiritual spring water gushed out from the ground and flowed down, nourishing all living things. Numerous little beasts ran happily in the forest, inhaling and exhaling spirit energy, drinking spirit spring water, and enjoying the illumination of these strands of auspicious light that were tiny yet solid. Unknowingly, they'd obtained growth and evolution, becoming even more robust and powerful. Countless cultivators, regardless of whether they were disciples of the Celestial Spirit sect or the North Nether sect, were immersed in the sudden formation of the Great Formation and the changes of creation and rebirth. They inexplicably gained enlightenment and immersed themselves in cultivation at the first moment. This was a creation, a special opportunity that could allow all living things in the world to sublimate to the extreme and make a breakthrough. Because of this, the cultivators' realms were loosened and their cultivations broke through. The cultivators' faces showed signs of enlightenment, and there were even cultivators who, under the invasion of the spiritual chi and the auspicious light, had their physiques greatly improved and special abilities were awakened. Boom, boom, boom. The sounds of cultivators breaking through rang out one after another. It made the spiritual chi in the surroundings more lively in the midst of the chaos. It's time. After 3 months of accumulation and settling, my foundation has become incomparably strong. It's time for me to break through. Fan Xingyu's bright eyes revealed a trace of brilliance. Then, under the illumination of the endless spiritual chi, she officially began to break through. I didn't expect that when this great formation was completed, there would be such a big commotion. It even allowed so many disciples to benefit. This is really beyond my expectations. Most importantly, when the protective mountain formation is completed, it turns out to be a real 6th grade great formation. With this, I can officially control the entire 5 Peaks mountain spirit vein and use the abundant spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the spirit vein to deduce a heaven-breaking Tao technique. Zue sat cross-legged in the void and sensed the situation of the cultivators above the spirit vein. He could not help but smile. Then, he took advantage of the opportunity to control the great formation and maintain the dense and abundant spiritual chi around the cultivators. As the person who set up the 6th grade great formation, his control of the entire great formation had reached an extremely high level. It was naturally very easy for him to control the division of spiritual chi in the great formation. Of course, he also noticed that Fan Xingyu was at the critical moment of her breakthrough. Almost 1/3 of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, and almost half of the auspicious chi surged around her to help her break through. A cultivator's breakthrough was a very spontaneous process. It was difficult for outsiders to provide much help. Therefore, Ziyue could not do much. However, the influx of spiritual chi and auspicious chi would definitely make Fan Xingyu's breakthrough smoother. The benefits she would obtain after breaking through would also be greater. Then, he poured the remaining spiritual chi of heaven and earth into his Kunwu Golden Pagoda and the book of the Great Tao that he had taken out. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Under the infusion of endless spiritual chi of heaven and earth, the Dharma cultivation room in the Kunwu Golden Pagoda shook rapidly. Countless Dharma laws of heaven and earth appeared, and the book of the Great Tao was also stimulated by the spiritual chi and emitted a fluorescent light. Ziyue did not hesitate. When he activated the enlightenment time, he quickly immersed his mind into it. As expected, the heaven-breaking Tao technique that I created has begun to be deduced rapidly again. Although it's still a little slow, the progress is gratifying. Ziyue's face was immediately filled with joy. Chapter 814. 10%, 11%, 12%. The progress of Ziyue's self-created heaven-breaking Tao technique was slowly improving. In the process of creating the technique, Ziyue was also improving at every moment. The endless mysteries of the Tao laws and the use of various true techniques, especially after his array formation Tao had reached the advanced 5th grade, allowed him to have a deeper understanding of the workings of the laws of heaven and earth. Therefore, he also had a better idea of how to create the technique. Unknowingly, He was integrating the mysteries of the Tao laws in the way of setting up a formation. Each of the mysteries of the Tao laws and the runes of the Great Tao were like the foundation of the formation. They were tightly controlled by him and connected one by one. As they were pushed forward, they gave rise to endless changes and endless power. On the other side, with the support of the spiritual power controlled by Ziyu, more than half of the auspicious Qi surged into the formation. This was especially true for the auspicious Qi. It was gathered from the void after the formation of the formation. It was not a gift from the world, but a natural creation that emerged after the formation was transformed. It could be said to be endless and would be born at almost every moment. If it was scattered, it would naturally be very thin. Although it could benefit the living beings of the Five Peaks Mountain, it would not have any special effects. However, it was all gathered around Fan Qingyu. As she absorbed it, it immediately gave her endless benefits. When she broke through to the Golden Core realm, she had endless opportunities and improvements. Third-grade Golden Core, second-grade Golden Core, first-grade Golden Core. She used all her strength to compress and refine the Golden Core, increasing the quality of the condensed Golden Core. Endless spiritual Qi of heaven and earth was absorbed by her. With the support of the great completion Tao body and the auspicious Qi, it was as if she had the help of the gods. Soon, her Golden Core was compressed to the extreme. Then, with a jerk of her body, a little purple light appeared on her Golden Core. Purple Pole Golden Core. Is this the sign that the Purple Pole Golden Core has been formed? Fan Qingyu's eyes were filled with obvious joy and excitement. However, she did not dare to relax and once again immersed herself in the process. However, although the little purple in the Golden Core was pleasing to her, it was not enough to satisfy her. This was because she felt that she still had strength left. The endless auspicious aura also made her secretly grateful, and at the same time, she also had greater ambitions. Thus, she forced herself to take a deep breath and once again madly circulated her cultivation technique to compress her Golden Core. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. Instantly, the purple spot on her Golden Core seemed to have spread out. It grew bigger and bigger, gradually filling up the other spots. Have you reached your limit? In the end, I can only increase the coverage of the amethyst golden pellet to about 80%, and I can't continue beyond that. Fan Qingyu's expression was slightly ugly, and she was unwilling to accept this result. From Ziyue's explanation, she already knew that the extreme violet Golden Core that her opponent had condensed was a pure, perfect extreme violet Golden Core. Violet covered the entire Golden Core, and the size of the Golden Core was incomparably large. It was so majestic that it looked like a house. What about her? Not only was the size of her Golden Core much smaller than Ziyue's, but the extreme violet Golden Core that she had condensed only took up 80% of the entire Golden Core. Although this 80% was actually more than countless cultivators since ancient times, and even more than Situ Zheng, it still made her feel somewhat regretful. One should know that her body constitution was special. She was born with a Taoist body, and now that she had reached the phenomenal success level, she was far superior to Ziyue's. No, I can't be content with the current situation. Although Brother Bai is strong, Fan Qingyu, can't just rely on him. I don't want to be in a situation where I can't control my own fate like before. Fan Qingyu's slightly downcast eyes suddenly lit up, and then a trace of determination appeared in them. At this moment, she actually quickly scattered the Golden Core that was about to be condensed, causing the originally solid and pure extreme violet Golden Core to quickly transform into a special black color. The 9 transformation Golden Core technique, after breaking, then establishing. After the Golden Core is shattered, it will be reformed according to the characteristics of the technique. After the 9 transformation, the condensed Golden Core will definitely be improved to a higher level. The magical effects of the 9 transformation Golden Core technique flashed through Fan Qingyu's mind. This technique was actually not very exquisite, and it was not a secret in the Celestial Spirit sect. Almost half of the peak deity realm cultivators would exchange for this technique before they formed their golden core in case of an emergency. This technique was actually mostly chosen by the cultivators of the Celestial Spirit sect. They were not satisfied with the golden core that they had condensed, so they had no choice but to choose this technique. For example, if a cultivator had a certain chance of condensing a third-grade golden core, but it was a fourth-grade golden core, he would choose to shatter his golden core and recondense it. At that time, there was a certain chance that he would go one step further and condense a third-grade golden core. But in fact, the more this technique was, the higher the risk. Once there was an accident, it was very likely that the cultivator's cultivation would be destroyed, and it would be difficult for him to condense his golden core again. Moreover, even if everything went smoothly, the cultivator might not be satisfied with the condensed golden core. But at this moment, Fan Xingyu did not hesitate to shatter her golden core and recondense it again. She knew very well that even if she used the 9 transformation golden core technique, it would be extremely difficult to transform her golden core into a perfect amethyst golden core. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The 9 transformation golden core technique ran wildly, and the shattered golden core quickly gathered and began to compress again. Third-grade golden core, second-grade golden core, first-grade golden core. Every time the 9 transformation golden core technique ran, the quality of Fan Xingyu's golden core would increase. At the 5th transformation, there was already a purple light above the golden core. Then the 6th transformation, the 7th transformation, the 8th transformation, the purple area gradually deepened. 50%, 60%, 70%. Soon, it reached 80%. 80%. Fan Xingyu was excited and continued. After the 9th transformation, the purple area increased sharply and reached 90%. 90% is still not enough. Fan Xingyu hesitated for a moment. Then her expression turned serious, and she shattered her golden core again. Her perfected Tao body, the endless spiritual qi of heaven and earth, and the support of countless auspicious qi, made her very confident, which was why she was so bold and decisive. First transformation, second transformation, third transformation, third-grade golden core, second-grade golden core, first-grade golden core. Finally, when she used the 9 transformation golden core technique to the 9 transformation, the golden core in her body shook violently and finally condensed completely, turning into a pure purple core the size of a water tank. Amethyst golden core. The perfect amethyst golden core. Fan Xingyu's face was full of joy. She had finally succeeded in forming the perfect amethyst Aurus core after 2 attempts of breaking the Aurus core and condensing it. After the perfect amethyst golden core was formed, Fan Xingyu's aura also changed greatly, becoming more ethereal and beautiful, like a goddess from the 9 heavens who had descended to the mortal world. Every move of hers revealed strange phenomena in the great Tao. With a thought, she withdrew the strange phenomena and hurriedly looked in the direction of Ziyue, just in time to see his smiling face. "How is it?" Ziyue saw her relaxed expression and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He couldn't help but smile and ask, "Not bad. I successfully formed the golden core." Then she deliberately paused and said, "The golden core is formed, the amethyst golden core. And it's a perfect amethyst golden core." Ziyue was stunned when he heard this, and then a look of surprise appeared on his face. He hurriedly said excitedly, "That's great. I didn't expect you to succeed." He already knew that although Fan Xingyu was usually quiet, she was very ambitious. She would not be satisfied with a mere first-grade golden core, and with her physique and accumulation, he was not surprised that she could form the amethyst golden core. However, the perfect amethyst golden pellet had truly shocked him. He also knew that she was far more stubborn and strong than he had imagined. The 6th-grade Protected Mountain Array was successfully set up, and under the gathering of endless spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the 5 Peaks Mountain changed almost every day. All kinds of exotic flowers and rare herbs were born. Even the ordinary spiritual trees became more tenacious and upright, and all kinds of creatures evolved. At this time, the disciples of the North Nether sect were all summoned by Ziyue and began to build immortal residences and halls on a large scale, corresponding to the layout of the entire sect. With the means of cultivators, and with the countless immortal materials that Ziyue had plundered from the many sea demon palaces and dragon palaces, the halls were quickly uprooted from the ground. The magnificent scene attracted the attention of the disciples of the Celestial Spirit sect. In just a short time, the entire Five Peaks mountain had changed. Not only were there celestial stone steps, but there were also hundreds of palaces and innumerable houses. Large spiritual fields were laid out in various parts of the Five Peaks mountain. With the guidance of the disciples of the Celestial Spirit sect, they also opened up a beast garden and a large spiritual orchard. It was also worth mentioning that several large spiritual mines were found in the Five Peaks mountain. Once they were mined, even without Ziyue's help, it would be enough for the sect to develop smoothly and become rich. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. After the formation was completed, the cultivators of the Celestial Spirit sect stayed for another 2 months and then left one after another. Fan Qingyu also left with them. After breaking through to the Golden Core realm, she also needed to exchange for the subsequent cultivation methods from the Celestial Spirit sect. Ziyue originally wanted to help her with the deduction, but was rejected because in addition to the cultivation methods, Fan Qingyu also needed to bring Zhao Linger, who was still in seclusion. Thinking of Zhao Linger, whom he had not seen for a long time, Ziyue was also quite emotional and did not insist. With Taoist Clear Spring and Mo Fan, the 2 top experts of the Celestial Spirit sect, escorting her along the way, he did not have to worry about Fan Qingyu's safety. Not to mention, Fan Qingyu still had a protective spiritual treasure on her. Holding the heaven-punishing axe, a middle-grade spiritual treasure, and with the strength of a perfect purple pole golden core, she could unleash strength comparable to a half-step primordial soul realm cultivator. Although she might not be able to pose a threat to a primordial soul realm cultivator, if a primordial soul realm cultivator really attacked, the weapon spirit of the heaven-punishing axe would also fight back with all its strength, unleashing a blow that could break the heavens. In the past 2 months, with the help of the abundant spiritual energy in the Five Peaks mountain, I have continuously deduced the creation of the cultivation method. My heaven-breaking Tao art has finally been deduced to the extreme and is only 1 step away from being completely formed and multiplying. In the past 2 months, Ziyue only showed up occasionally, and most of his attention was on the creation of the cultivation method. And after 2 months of deductions, although the progress of his creation was slow, he had already reached the extreme half a month ago and was only 1 step away from being able to sublimate to the extreme and completely form the cultivation method. However, it was this final step that was like a heavenly strike that blocked his path, preventing him from succeeding in the end. As expected, this heaven-breaking Tao art is not so easy to create. Now that my various deductions have reached the extreme, but it still hasn't been formed. Clearly, I'm still lacking something? Ziyue pondered for a moment, pondering the reason behind it. He believed that his accumulation and foundation were definitely not bad, or at least not weaker than any of the supreme-level cultivators. As for the time needed to create the cultivation method, because of the time needed to comprehend the Tao, the Book of the Great Tao, the Law Cultivation Room, and even the support of the auspicious aura, it was actually enough to offset the hundreds and thousands of years spent by countless supreme-level cultivators. Then, what I'm lacking is only the cultivation level. Could it be because my cultivation level has not reached the peak of the primordial soul realm? Ziyue's expression darkened slightly. His current cultivation level was actually not low and had already reached the mid-stage primordial soul realm. In terms of cultivation level, it was enough for him to be an elder in any super sect, be in charge of a territory, and change the fate of billions of people with a single word. However, this was obviously not enough for him to create the attack that could break the suppression of heaven and earth and the seal of the great Tao. No, that's not right. Cultivation level is not the problem. Heaven-breaking Tao art is ultimately still a Tao art and a supreme Tao art. In terms of cultivation level, it's impossible for me to cultivate the Heart Sword technique, instant 1,000-mile distance, True Dragon Dark Armor technique, and Nine Thunder God-destroying seal to perfection. Therefore, what I'm lacking is not the primordial soul realm, but Ziyue quickly shook his head, and a thoughtful look suddenly appeared on his face. Cultivation level was very important to cultivators of the immortal Tao. It was the foundation of cultivation, the source of the great Tao. However, cultivation level did not represent one's strength. This was especially so for Ziyue, who fought above his level and went against the odds to defeat immortals. This was something that he relied on. Apart from his foundation in cultivation level, the most important thing was actually those Tao arts. In summary, he naturally understood that what he lacked was not just cultivation level. It was a kind of spirit, essence, qi, and spirit. The heaven-breaking Tao art that I've created now is an offensive secret art. But no matter what kind of secret art it is, it contains a great murderous intent. This murderous intent is actually the essence, qi, and spirit. If a cultivator has no murderous intent and no desire to kill, how can he really create the heaven-breaking Tao art that he needs? A look of understanding appeared on Ziyue's face. In recent years, although he had been decisive in killing, he really lacked the murderous intent that he had in the early days. Therefore, he had to regain his murderous intent. Chapter 8:15. Regaining his murderous heart did not mean that he had to let go of his evil thoughts and kill without restraint. That would be equivalent to becoming a demon, which was not an option for him. Regaining his murderous heart was also a process of subduing it. It required him to kill decisively and kill those he thought deserved to be killed. It was also a process of refining his heart in the mortal world, a process of sublimation and battle. Therefore, I need a great battle, a battle that I can fight freely and without any scruples. I need to release all of my strength. Ziyue understood what he lacked. Although he had killed to his heart's content during the heavenly tribulation, and many experts had died at his hands, most of them had borrowed the power of the heavenly tribulation. On the other hand, he had not displayed much of his own strength. Naturally, it was difficult for him to be emotionally affected. If he had not completely released his murderous heart, how could he subdue it? However, I have been peaceful and invincible. Where is the murderous heart? Ziyue frowned. He was too powerful. Ordinary cultivators did not dare to provoke him. Even the heavenly spirit sect, which had wanted to kill him, bowed their heads in time and wanted to befriend him, not to mention the other forces. However, the 9-star Tao Palace, which was extraordinarily powerful and ranked among the top 3 forces in the star realm, had a deeper grudge with him. Until now, there had been no conclusion. Buzz. At this moment, Ziyue felt the message talisman in his storage bag vibrate slightly. His eyes moved, and he quickly took it out. It was Fu Yinfan. Fu Yinfan was an expert who had been recruited by him before Master Calm Heart and Jiang Taixian in the Dragon Palace. He was also one of the rare late primordial spirit realm cultivators. Previously, Ziyue had planned to ask him to look for a suitable spiritual land for the North Nether sect. Now that he had already chosen this spiritual land, and even the mountain guarding formation had been completed, everything was on the right track. Naturally, there was no need for him to search for it. Before this, he had also left a message for the other party to return to Five Peaks Mountain's North Nether sect at any time. However, almost half a year had passed, and there had been no response. Fu Yinfan had not come to the Five Peaks Mountain either. Now, there was finally news. Fu Yinfan greets the sect leader. Fu Yinfan's figure appeared in the messaging shadow. His face was filled with obvious respect. He didn't expect that Ziyue would cause such a huge commotion while he was gone. He had gone through the tribulation alone, killed countless powerhouses, and even exiled a Lamiter, the sect master of the Myriad Phenomenon sect, into spatial turbulence. To this day, he had not been able to return to the star boundary, nor had he dared to. Most importantly, he was recognized as a publicly recognized Lameter and was one of the top 10 Lameters in the world. His ranking was even higher than that of the Wanxiang sect's leader, Sidu Wu. When he first heard of these deeds, even he was a little dumbfounded. Even though he had long known that the other party's strength was astounding and could resist the extraterrestrial demon head-on, he did not expect the other party to have such a shocking performance. "What is it?" Ziyu asked indifferently. "Sect Master, during this period of time, due to an accident, I was accidentally involved in an ancient battlefield. In the ancient battlefield, the primordial Qi is chaotic and the Tao is murky. It is impossible to send messages. Therefore, I have not replied to the sect leader's letter for a few months. Now that I have just walked out of the ancient battlefield, I can't wait to contact the sect leader." When Fu Yinfan saw this, he quickly replied, "Ancient battlefield?" Bai Ziyu was taken aback and asked in surprise. "That's right. This ancient battlefield was left behind after the great battle between the 7 perfected immortals 10,000 years ago. The battlefield is extremely wide and extremely dangerous. Even a peak primordial soul realm powerhouse would be in danger of dying if he stepped into it. But at the same time, there are many treasures inside. Even an inconspicuous weed that could survive in such an environment would be considered a heavenly treasure outside. Not to mention, there are countless Dharma treasures left behind from the ancient war. There are golden core treasures, primordial soul treasures, and even numinous treasures left behind after the fall of the perfected immortals. Therefore, almost every year, there would be cultivators entering the battlefield for these treasures." Fu Yinfan said. Ziyu nodded. He naturally knew that the ancient battlefield was left behind after the great battle between the perfected immortals 10,000 years ago. In addition to the treasures left behind by the perfected immortals, many of the inheritances and treasures of the 2 super immortal sects of the ancient Barren region were also in the ancient battlefield. Over the past 10,000 years, the number of numinous treasures that have been discovered in the ancient battlefield was no less than the number of 5-finger techniques. Therefore, it attracted countless top experts to enter the battlefield to explore. Even old monster Ding Chun, whom he had killed some time ago, had stayed in the ancient battlefield for close to 100 years. That was why the outside world guessed that he had died. He did not expect that Fu Yinfan had not seen him for a period of time because he had entered the ancient battlefield. The ancient battlefield is full of danger. This time, I entered it because of an accident. Initially, I wanted to use the teleportation formation in the Dragon Palace to leave. But on the way, I found that the other end of the teleportation formation had been damaged and the space had shifted. When I came back to my senses, I found that I had been teleported to the ancient battlefield. Fu Yinfan explained. The teleportation formation in the Dragon Palace is not safe. Ziyu nodded and said. When he had been teleported, he had also met with an accident. If he had not been strong enough to forcefully open the space barrier and enter the astral boundary, he would not have known where he would have been teleported to. Perhaps, like Fu Yinfan, they would directly enter the ancient battlefield. If they were unlucky, they might enter a dangerous place, or even directly enter the stomach of a terrifying giant beast, dying before they could even achieve their goal. Yes, I was teleported to the ancient battlefield back then, and I was near the center of the battlefield. I experienced countless dangers along the way. There were no less than 10 life-and-death situations. It took me another half a year to barely walk out of the battlefield. However, it was this experience that allowed me to find a secret treasure. That secret treasure was a jade scepter. The jade scepter shone with a 7-colored radiance. It was definitely a numinous treasure, and its grade was not low. However, the entire numinous treasure was in a deadly formation and was guarded by 7 puppets. Of these 7 puppets, even the weakest one was no weaker than me. With my current strength, there was nothing I could do. Therefore, I would like to ask the sect leader to help me fight for the numinous treasure. Fu Yinfan said in a serious tone. A numinous treasure? Jade scepter? Ziyu frowned. He was naturally interested in numinous treasures. However, the most important thing for him now was to create a heaven-breaking Tao technique. If it was not necessary, he did not want to delay it. However, when he thought of the ancient battlefield, he felt that it was a very suitable place for him to regain his killing desire and then subdue it. This was because there were countless experts in the ancient battlefield. Not only were there cultivators from the firmament territory, but there were also experts from the sky demon domain and the true law domain. There were also demonic beasts, exotic beasts, and experts from the barbarian tribe. There was no right or wrong in killing. Moreover, the ancient battlefield was within the ancient barbarian domain. It also hid the secret of the battle between the 7 genuine immortals 10,000 years ago. If it could cause the 7 genuine immortals to fight, one could imagine how big the secret was. If it was a treasure, it would be extremely precious and would be beyond anything else. It would be highly sought after by countless people. Although Ziyue was not determined to get it, he could not help but be interested. Of course, the most important thing was that he had been away from the ancient barbarian domain for many years. He missed the scenery of the ancient barbarian domain. If possible, he would like to return to the ancient barbarian domain and take a look. Therefore, Ziyue ultimately decided to attend the meeting. As for the dangers of the ancient battlefield, he was not worried. An ultimate realm cultivator represented the peak of the astral boundary. Although he might not be invincible in the ancient battlefield, it was enough to increase his ability to protect his life. At least within the star level, there were very few people who could hurt him. Moreover, he also had a numinous treasure to protect him. Ever since his immortal techniques had broken through to the primordial soul realm, the power that he could unleash when he used the Kunwa Golden Pagoda had increased by a lot, especially its defensive power. He estimated that even a spirit-severing realm expert would have to put in a lot of effort to break it. As for its offensive power, the Kunwa Golden Pagoda was not an offensive numinous treasure. Even if it could unleash a terrifying power through the Kunwa Golden Pagoda, it was only at the level of the Supreme Realm. It was just that the range of impact was wider. This was also the reason why he was so eager to create a heaven-breaking Dao technique. Since he had decided, Ziyue would not hesitate. He handed over the many matters of the North Nether sect to Jiang Taixian and the rest to handle. He also distributed the treasures that he had obtained earlier. He believed that with the protection of the 6th Great Array, even a Supreme Realm expert would not be able to escape unscathed. Only then did he leave with peace of mind. Driving the boat of large scale to fly through the void, Ziyue sat down cross-legged and began to carefully read some information about the ancient battlefield. With his current strength and status, whether it was with the help of the Celestial Spirit Sect or Mount Qingxian, he could obtain the information he needed, especially Mount Qingxian. He thought that because he had rejected the invitation of the Mount Qingxian Mountain Master, the other party would hold a grudge against him and restrict him from using the Mount Qingxian Mountain token. He did not expect that not only was he not restricted, but the Mount Qingxian Mountain Master even personally appeared to apologize to him and opened up many treasures for him to exchange. One of them was called the Shi Ling Essence. It could increase the strength of a cultivator's soul and repair damage to the soul. He could not help but be tempted and could not help but exchange for some more. Of course, he was not surprised by the Mount Qingxian Mountain Master's goodwill. Now that he had mastered such powerful means and the strength of a Supreme Realm expert, no matter how unwilling the Mount Qingxian Mountain Master was, he would not dare to offend him. Otherwise, if Ziyue was angered, the revenge of a Supreme Realm expert would be too much for the Mount Qingxian Mountain to bear, even if it was the second largest assassin organization in the astral world. The ancient battlefield was gradually formed 10,000 years ago after the earth-shattering battle between the 7 perfected immortal realm experts. That battle caused the astral world to tremble and the ancient barren region to sink and split apart. It was almost destroyed. Moreover, there were perfected immortal realm experts who died there. The perfected immortal realm experts were highly skilled, and their bodies contained endless power of Tao. After the perfected immortal realm experts died, the great Tao was revealed, and heaven and earth were compassionate. Endless immortal Qi was released. Because of that, the creation was born and all kinds of rare treasures were born. In addition, the perfected immortal realm experts would definitely have numerous treasures on them. Naturally, countless cultivators would fight to go there. Over the past 10,000 years, countless cultivators had obtained opportunities, secret treasures, inheritances, or spiritual fruits of the heavens and earth. In a short period of time, their strength had increased tremendously. But at the same time, countless cultivators were buried in foreign lands, forever lost in the ancient battlefield. Ziyue pondered silently. He was not surprised by this. The more treasures there were, the higher the level of danger. Not to mention, other than the harsh environment, there were actually more conflicts and killings between cultivators. Naturally, they had to be more careful. It could be said that many cultivators in the ancient barren battlefield were killed by the great killing array that was left behind 10,000 years ago. However, more of them died in the hands of their companions and other human cultivators. According to the information, the entire ancient barren battlefield is divided into 3 levels of danger. They are the outer region, the central region, and the land of the fallen immortals. Among them, golden core cultivators can enter the outer region. There is a certain chance of obtaining treasures that can increase one's strength and potential. For many golden core cultivators who know that their potential is hopeless and can't improve their strength for a long time, it is extremely tempting. The central region is relatively more dangerous. Only primordial soul cultivators dare to step into it. Even so, the risk factor is extremely high. From time to time, there are news of primordial soul cultivators dying there. Of course, the more dangerous it is, the greater the benefits one can obtain. Not only are there many heavenly treasures with astonishing value, but there are also many primordial soul treasures that are scattered everywhere for some reason. After a period of time, there are even numerous treasures that appear, causing countless cultivators to go crazy and fight for them. As for the land of the fallen immortals, as the name suggests, it is the place where true immortals are suspected to have fallen. Not only are there core array components that can kill people silently, but there is also immortal evil chi that invades the surroundings and contaminates everything, causing people to tremble in fear. It is said that in the early days, there is a supreme realm cultivator who was contaminated by this immortal evil chi. He spent 100 years, but still couldn't get rid of it completely. Instead, it affected his cultivation path and made it impossible for him to reach the separating divinity stage. Of course, on the other hand, it is said that there are numerous treasures in the land of the fallen immortals. Even the legendary immortal treasure that the 7 true immortals fought for is also in the land of the fallen immortals. No one has really taken it. Ziyue looked thoughtful as he flipped through the records and information about the ancient barren battlefield, the outer region, the central region, and the land of the fallen immortals. To him, the only place that was truly dangerous was the land of the fallen immortals. This was because there were terrifying killing arrays and immortal evil chi that could threaten supreme realm cultivators. As for the legendary immortal treasure, he actually didn't believe that it would be in the land of the fallen immortals. The reason for that was because he knew that in the battle between the 7 true immortals, there would be people who would die and people who would be injured. There would definitely be people who would emerge victorious. The victorious party would definitely not allow the immortal treasure to be left outside. It would definitely have been taken away. Unless... Chapter 8:16. Unless, in that great battle, all 7 of them were defeated and injured, causing them to be unable to take away the immortal treasure. However, was that possible? Ziyue shook his head and did not believe it. In particular, he knew that outside the 100,000 mountains of the ancient barren region, there is a large formation barrier that covered the heavens and the earth. The formation barrier's aura was not obvious, and the area it covered was extremely large. However, it was able to block countless monsters above the god realm in the 100,000 mountains. One could imagine how powerful it was. Even now, Ziyue's formation Dao had reached the advanced 5th grade, and he vaguely saw a trace of the mystery of the 6th grade formation master. However, he was not confident that he could set up such a large formation. That formation was obviously set up by an immortal path expert above the supreme realm at the spirit-severing stage. Moreover, that expert's formation Tao was extremely powerful, at least above the 6th grade. In the entire star boundary, I have never heard of anyone whose formation Tao had reached the 6th grade. Therefore, that large formation was most likely set up by one of the 7 immortal realm experts, and it was set up after that great battle. Ziwa judged with a complicated look in his eyes. Even if that large formation had indeed been of great help to the remaining humans in the ancient barren region, at least it had prevented the people of the ancient barren region from being attacked and harmed by the monsters in the 100,000 mountains or other places. However, it was also a fact that the battle between the 7 immortals had sunk the ancient barren region. It should be known that when the ancient barren region was at its peak, it was not weaker than the firmament territory. It was said that there were even immortal path experts at the spirit-severing stage guarding it. But now, the strongest immortal path sects were only at the god realm. The spiritual chi was thin, and there were few cultivators. It was called the Immortal Path Desert. As a cultivator from the ancient barren region, if possible, I have to do something for it. Ziwa thought of what the Choyang Dao sect master had said to him before he left. That kind of eagerness and hope that the ancient barren region could break the seal and not be called a prison like it was now, and that they could return to the peak. Thinking about it now moved him. The cultivators of the ancient barren region had been in despair for too long. The great Tao had no end in sight and could not be pursued. To cultivators who longed to transcend and cultivate in defiance of the heavens, such a thing was simply too powerless and too depressing. It was also because of this that the heavenly spirit sect's once every 30 years recruitment of geniuses was akin to cutting off the future potential of the ancient desolate region. On the contrary, it was a huge opportunity, causing countless cultivators to look forward to it. If we want the ancient desolate region to return to the real world, we must first get rid of the seal on the cage. The astral wind canyon, the boundless sea realm, and the 100,000 great mountain range had to be opened. In addition, the most important thing is to increase the density of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth here. Ziyue's eyes flickered, and he could not help but take out his communication token. The power of his primordial spirit moved slightly, and he started to send a message. Soon, the communication token was connected, and the figure of the celestial spirit sect leader, Zhou Gutong, appeared in the void. This was the 10,000 miles communication token that the two of them had left with each other the last time they met. It allowed them to contact each other anytime, anywhere. Dark North Sect Master? May I know why fellow Taoist Dark North is looking for me? Zhou Gutong raised his eyebrows in surprise and asked. Sect Leader Zhou, there is something I would like to ask Sect Leader Zhou. Ziyue did not hesitate and asked directly. Then, without waiting for Zhou Gutong to ask, he said directly, Sect Leader Zhou should know that I was born in the ancient desolate region. Although I know that my abilities are limited, I still want to do something for the ancient desolate region. Therefore, I would like to know how to restore the vitality of the ancient desolate region when the spiritual chi recovers to its peak. Also, how can we open the cage of the ancient desolate region so that the cultivators can freely enter and exit the firmament territory or even a wider area? He knew that the Celestial Spirit sect was the only sect that allowed cultivators to enter and exit the ancient desolate region in the past 10,000 years. Therefore, he knew the ancient desolate region very well. Therefore, if there was anyone who could answer his question, it would be the many experts of the Celestial Spirit sect. Dark North Sect Master, you are indeed extraordinary. Your breadth of mind is even more admirable. When Zhou Gutong heard this, he first sighed in admiration. Then his face turned serious, and he said, However, it is not so easy to restore the vitality of the ancient barren region and restore the spiritual chi as you envisioned. This is because the spiritual veins have deteriorated. When the ancient desolate region was at its peak, it was not weaker than the firmament territory. In fact, the number and grade of the spiritual veins were not weaker than the firmament territory. However, The Great Battle 10,000 years ago almost destroyed half of the spiritual veins in the firmament territory, causing the ancient desolate region to sink. The spiritual veins are either broken or silent, and there is no longer any spiritual chi of heaven and earth escaping from them. This is the reason why the path of immortal skills in the ancient desolate region has become so difficult. However, if you want to restore the broken and silent spiritual veins, there is only one way, which is to activate the underground dragon veins in the ancient desolate region and restore the spiritual veins in the ancient desolate region. Underground dragon veins? Ziyue was stunned. Dark North Sect Master, you should know that the entire star boundary is divided into 4 territories: the firmament territory, the true law territory, the sky demon territory, and the ancient desolate region. The division of territories is not based on size or power. In fact, it is based on the underground dragon veins. There are 4 dragon veins in each of the 4 territories. For example, in the firmament territory, if there is a cultivator who can see the bottom of the firmament territory, he will find that many spiritual lands in the firmament territory are actually attached to a dragon vein. The dragon vein is stable and even healthy. Naturally, the spiritual chi in the firmament territory is endless, and it can continuously cultivate countless cultivators. However, the dragon veins in the ancient barren region were almost destroyed in the Great Battle 10,000 years ago. They were severely damaged. As a result, the dragon veins began to wither and fall into a deep slumber. Naturally, many of the spiritual veins in the ancient barren region fell in rank. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth was greatly reduced. Even the great Tao of heaven and earth was covered in dust and was no longer clear. The direct impact on immortal skill cultivators is that it is more difficult to achieve Tao and break through. Therefore, I am very impressed that Dark North Sect Master was able to break out of the ancient desolate region. As he spoke, Zhou Gudong did not forget to praise him, as if he was very impressed. Then how can the dragon vein be reactivated and restored? Ziyue hurriedly asked. There are 2 ways. The first way is to use great divine powers and powerful means to move mountains and fill seas, and reverse the Great Yuan. The broken dragon vein in the entire ancient desolate region and the blocked spiritual chi and vital energy can be dredged one by one. In this way, the earth chi will be united and the dragon vein will be reconnected. Naturally, the dragon vein of the entire ancient desolate region will be restored. From then on, the spiritual chi will erupt and the creation will be born. The cultivator's cultivation will also be smooth, and there will be golden core realm, primordial soul realm, and even spirit severing realm experts. As for the second way, at this point, Zhou Gudong paused for a moment. He thought about the difficulty and knew that Bai Ziyue was not a reckless and crazy person. Finally, he said, the second method is to sever the dragon veins of other domains and plant them in the dragon veins of the ancient desolate region. In this way, the dragon vein in the ancient desolate region will be replenished by the other dragon veins, and it will naturally be restored and reborn. However, this method is to cut off the dragon vein in other regions and replenish one's own region. The impact is too far-reaching. Once you make a move, the entire region will see you as an enemy and will not rest until you are dead. Of course, those who can do this are at least spirit-severing realm experts. Ordinary cultivators will not be able to withstand the divine punishment of heaven and earth and the pursuit of the great Tao. There are 2 ways. The first is to sort out the earth chi and restore the dragon vein. The second is to cut off the dragon vein in other regions and restore the dragon vein in the ancient desolate region. Hearing this, Ziyue's expression changed slightly. He also felt the difficulty of this. With his strength, he was indeed able to accomplish the first method. However, the time required would definitely be incomparably huge. One had to know that when he was setting up the protective mountain array, it took him several days just to sort out the earth chi in the 5 Peaks Mountain. Not to mention the entire ancient desolate region, which was incomparably vast. He estimated that even if he spent 1,000 years, it would still be difficult to succeed. At least with his current strength, it would be extremely difficult for him to do so. As for the second type, it was needless to say. Those who could do this were all-powerful cultivators at the spirit-severing stage and above. Even ultimate primordial soul stage cultivators would not be able to do this. With Ziyue's current strength, it was naturally impossible for him to do so. Not to mention cutting off the dragon vein, it would be difficult for him to even grasp the method of peering into the heavens and earth and find out the exact location of the dragon vein, let alone cut it off. Of course, even if he could really do it, he would be extremely cautious and would definitely not be so crazy. This was because the impact was too great. If he was not careful, it would cause billions of people to be plunged into misery and suffering. Compared to this, the backlash of the great Tao, the divine punishment of heaven and earth, and even the cultivators in the region who viewed him as an enemy, were nothing. Although Ziyue was not a merciful person, he would definitely not do such a crazy thing for his own selfish reasons. Indeed, it is not so easy to restore the spiritual qi of the ancient barren region to its peak from 10,000 years ago. Ziyue thought to himself, but he was not completely discouraged. He was currently only at the intermediate primordial soul realm, and his strength was relatively weak. It would naturally be extremely difficult for him to do so. However, he believed that when his cultivation reached the peak of the primordial soul realm, or even a step further and step into the spirit-severing realm, many problems that seemed impossible at the moment would naturally be solved. He was also confident that with his methods and the special ability of his attribute panel, he would definitely be able to increase his strength again in a short period of time. It would not be impossible for him to break through to the primordial soul realm or even to the spirit-severing realm. Actually, restoring the dragon vein is the root of solving the problem of the ancient barren region. However, as far as I know, the number of living beings in the ancient barren region who are lucky enough to survive is actually extremely small. Most of them are gathered in the center of the ancient barren region. Therefore, you can completely increase the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the center of the ancient barren region. It was easy to do so. All they needed to do was to break the barrier that enveloped the ancient desolate region. In this way, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth from the outside world will flow into the ancient barren region, forming a spiritual qi tide that will naturally give birth to many fortunes. Of course, there's a price to pay. The barrier around the ancient barren region is very likely to have been left behind by the final victors of the immortal battlefield. It is almost connected to the entire ancient barren region. Even if I were to attack, it would probably be difficult to break it. Instead, it is very likely that I would suffer a backlash. Apart from that, if the formation was truly destroyed, it would be extremely dangerous. Of course, there will be a lot of spiritual qi in the surroundings that will form a spiritual qi tide that will benefit countless people. However, because of this, it will also attract many sea demons and great demons from the 100,000 mountains and the endless sea domain. The current ancient barren region will not be able to withstand the invasion of these existences. The people will be plunged into misery and suffering. Good intentions will lead to bad things. As he spoke, Zhou Gudong could not help but sigh. This is indeed a good idea, although there are some drawbacks. Ziyue's eyes flickered as he thought of solution. However, he quickly thanked Zhou Gudong and said solemnly, "Thank you, sect leader Zhou, for clearing my doubts. It's no problem. Even if I don't say these things, with your strength, you can easily find out about them. It's nothing." Zhou Gudong waved his hand and did not take the credit. Then Ziyue asked about the ancient barren region, such as the barrier outside the 100,000 mountains, the strong winds in the astral wind canyon, and the special and strange environment in the endless sea domain. Although there were some things that even Zhou Gudong did not know much about, Ziyue still learned a lot. As a result, he also had a certain understanding of many things in the ancient barren region. In the end, Ziyue said meaningfully, What does Brother Zhou know about the ancient barren battlefield? Ancient barren battlefield? You want to enter the ancient barren battlefield? Zhou Gudong was stunned and asked in surprise. If you want to solve the problem of the ancient barren region, you naturally can avoid the ancient barren battlefield. Ziyue smiled and said meaningfully, "That's true." Zhou Gudong nodded and then frowned. He said, "The ancient barren battlefield is definitely a dangerous place. It's the same even for extreme state experts like you and me. The outer and central areas are fine. Although there is a certain level of danger, it shouldn't be difficult for you to solve it with your strength. However, the most central area, the land of the fallen mortals, is extremely terrifying and dangerous. Even extreme state experts have the risk of dying if they enter it. The immortal evil chi that can invade almost everything is an existence that is a headache for any cultivator. Thus, even though everyone was extremely clear that there were definitely spirit treasures within the fallen immortal land, and there were even precious treasures left behind by fallen true immortals, practically no one dared to step into it. Another thing worth mentioning is that there was once a cultivator who was near the land of the fallen immortals and caught a glimpse of a cultivator wearing a simple robe. That cultivator had a strange appearance and a temperament that was completely different from the experts in the astral realm. His aura was vast, and the immortal evil chi soared into the sky. He was definitely a spirit-severing stage existence that was above the primordial soul stage. It's very likely that he was one of the 7 true immortals back then. As he spoke, Zhou Gudong paused for a moment before continuing. That true immortal expert is an existence that can shatter an entire territory. Moreover, it's unknown whether he's an enemy or a friend. Once we encounter him, it's too dangerous. If possible, I advise you not to take risks so easily. Chapter 817. An expert at the spirit-severing stage was already extremely powerful. They could break the shackles of the heavens and earth, suppress the great Tao, and unleash an attack that transcended everything. An expert of the supreme realm would not be able to withstand such an attack and would be severely injured or even killed instantly. As for the perfected immortal experts from 10,000 years ago, the weakest one was at the advanced stage of the spirit-severing stage. They could destroy the astral realm. Even if Yue broke through to the initial stage of the spirit-severing stage and became a mighty immortal, he might not be able to match up to them, let alone the fact that he was only at the supreme realm now. Once he encountered them, the risk of dying was extremely high. Hence, after hearing Zhou Gutong's reminder, his heart trembled. He nodded solemnly and said, "Thank you for telling me. I will be careful." However, he did not give up on the idea of entering the ancient battlefield. Of course, if an expert at the perfected immortal level appeared, it would be difficult to determine whether he was a friend or foe. However, as he had said before, if he wanted to revive the spirit chi in the ancient barren region, he could not avoid the ancient battlefield. He had to make a trip there. Even if he could not solve any problems, he had to have a certain understanding of the ancient battlefield. As for the perfected immortal level expert, after so many years, I have not heard of anyone dying in the hands of a perfected immortal level expert. Such an existence would not act easily. Even if I am unlucky enough to encounter one, it might be an opportunity for me. Ziyue thought optimistically. However, deep in his heart, he was actually quite fearful. He naturally did not believe that he would be able to obtain an opportunity if he encountered such an existence. However, he knew that there must be a reason why the perfected immortal level expert stayed in the astral realm. Perhaps it was because of the legendary immortal treasure that he had been lingering. Perhaps he was like the extraterrestrial demon, severely injured and needed to recuperate. Or perhaps he could not leave at all. Ziyue did not believe that the 7 perfected immortal level experts could remain unscathed after causing so much damage to the astral realm. Next, Ziyue piloted the boat of great enlargement and sped towards Fu Yunfan's location. The gigantic ark was a rare, flying treasure, even in the celestial spirit sect. Its speed was astonishing. At full speed, It was comparable to a peak primordial spirit realm cultivator. Such speed could not even be described as lightning. In the blink of an eye, nearly 50 kilometers had passed. The myriad of sceneries were like passing clouds. Even a golden core realm cultivator wouldn't be able to see them clearly before disappearing before their eyes. Swoosh! Swoosh! The rolling air currents formed a strong and turbulent gale. Hurricanes swirled and the wind howled. They either formed a gust of strong wind or stirred up waves of air, forming layers of clouds. Whoosh! Between the layers of clouds, there was a phenomenon. Wind and thunder rubbed against each other, forming dark clouds. With a thunderclap, thunder and lightning streaked across. A burst of rain, accompanied by the sound of thunder, swept down from the sky. An hour later, Ziyue appeared on top of a mountain. Fu Yunfan greets the sect master. We haven't seen each other for a while, but the sect master's demeanor is even greater than before. His aura is shocking, and he can swallow thousands of kilometers like a tiger. He is the best in the world. Not long after, a slightly old but sage-like elder appeared and rushed over like lightning. It was Fu Yunfan, who had taken the initiative to seek refuge in the Dragon Palace. Besides Fu Yunfan, there were two other figures beside him. One of them was a burly man with a sturdy body and bristling hair. He carried a long rod on his back and stared at by Ziyue with a hint of doubt. The other was a fox as tall as a man and covered in snow-white fur. This fox, Ziyue was stunned. He looked familiar. That's enough. You're really good at flattering people. Ziyue waved his hand and looked at the burly man and the fox demon. He said, "May I know who these two Taoists are?" Regardless of whether they were immortal spell cultivators, foreign clans, or demonic beasts, once they reached the Golden Core realm, they had already transcended the limits of their clans. Those who had a wide range of friends could naturally call each other Taoists and form friendships. Therefore, even though the White Fox was obviously an expert of the demon clan, he did not directly threaten to kill it. Instead, he called a Taoist, especially that White Fox. If he did not remember wrongly, he had met her once before. When he was at the peak of the Aperture Awakening realm, he had crossed the 100,000 mountains in order to break out of the cage of the ancient barren region. During that time, he happened to see an essence spirit flower blooming. At that time, besides many gods and Golden Core realm demons, he also saw two demon ancestors of the primordial soul realm. Besides a giant eagle, there was also a white fox. If he remembered correctly, the white fox was the one in front of him. This is Taoist Fei Peng, a rare body cultivator. Although he is only at the intermediate primordial soul realm, his strength is not weaker than any advanced primordial soul realm cultivator. If he uses the shocking heavenly staff technique that he created himself, he can even break the barrier of space and unleash an attack that is comparable to that of a peak primordial soul realm cultivator. This is Taoist Suyu from the 100,000 Mountains, Taoist Qingran Mountain. Taoist Suyu is from the Fox King clan of the Demon Clan. His strength is also very shocking. Not only is his primordial soul attack amazing, but he has also mastered extremely powerful illusory techniques. Cultivators of the same realm are almost unstoppable. They can easily fall into his trap and lose their ability to resist. This time, if not for the help of these two Taoists, with my strength and techniques, even if I don't die, it will be difficult for me to safely retreat from the ancient barren battlefield in a short time. Hearing this, Fu Yunfan hurriedly introduced them. He acknowledged the strength of the two Taoists and was very grateful. The ancient barren battlefield was full of danger, and there were countless layers of formations. Back then, Old Freak Ding Chun had been trapped in a formation for 100 years because he was exploring the ancient barren battlefield. He only managed to escape with the help of the experts of the nature sect. One should know that Old Freak Ding Chun was a peak primordial soul realm cultivator. Even he was trapped for 100 years. One could imagine how dangerous the ancient barren battlefield was. Although Fu Yunfan's experience was similar to Old Freak Ding Chen's, he also knew how dangerous it was. Greetings, Taoist Fei Peng. Ziyue nodded and first greeted the boorish Fei Peng. Greetings, sect leader Bei Ming. Sect Master Darknorth's recent reputation could be said to be extremely great. Even I have heard of him from time to time. However, I wonder how strong sect leader Bei Ming really is? Fei Peng glanced at Ziyue and could not help but ask. Obviously, he was not very convinced. Ziyue smiled and did not answer. He knew that although he was famous, which a mortal spell cultivator would admit that they were weak, no matter how widely the outside world spread it, it would not be as good as seeing it with one's own eyes. Moreover, almost everyone knew that although Ziyue was strong, he mostly relied on his numinous treasure. No one knew how strong his true strength was. Fei Peng was one of the few body cultivators in the world. He was even able to unleash the power of a peak primordial soul realm cultivator at the mid-primordial soul realm. This was enough to shock the world. Naturally, he was arrogant and was not convinced. Fellow Taoist Fei Peng. Fuyan Fan frowned slightly and quickly reminded him. He was very clear about Ziyue's strength and had seen him fight with his own eyes. Even if he did not rely on his numinous treasure, he could unleash the full power of a peak primordial soul realm cultivator when he was at the peak golden core realm. Now that his immortal spell realm had risen to the extreme and reached the primordial soul realm, his strength would definitely increase tremendously. He might really have the strength of the extreme realm. He did not think that Fei Peng was a match for him. Provoking him would only be embarrassing himself. After all, he was indebted to Fei Peng. He naturally did not want to embarrass him. Taoist Bei Ming, this isn't the first time we've met, right? At this moment, the Fox Clan Demon King, Suyu, looked at Ziyue with a puzzled expression and asked doubtfully. Hearing that, Ziyue smiled and nodded. Indeed, it's not the first time we've met. A few years ago, when the primordial soul flower bloomed in the 100,000 mountains, I saw you once from afar. I still remember how you looked back then. It's you? You're that human brat back then. How is that possible? It's only been a few years. Back then, you had just broken through to the early stage of the God realm. How could you reach such a powerful level in such a short period of time? Suyu's body shook and her face was full of disbelief. Immortal spell cultivators, regardless of whether they were from the demon clan or the human clan, had amazing memory. Previously, she actually had some doubts. However, because the difference in strength between Ziyue and before was too great, she did not dare to believe it for a while. At this moment, when she heard the other party admit it personally, the shock in her heart was even greater, and she felt even more incredulous. In just a few years, the human brat that she could easily crush to death and even destroy the other party's divine soul with just a glance had now reached such a terrifying level in a single leap. He had reached a level that even she had to face seriously and even look up to. It should be known that there was a gap of 2 major realms between the early stage of the God realm and the early stage of the primordial soul realm. With thousands of years of cultivation, how many geniuses had she heard of and seen? However, he had never heard of anyone who was so talented and out of the world. I was just lucky. Ziyue waved his hand and said with a smile, I still have to thank you for not killing me back then. At this moment, he naturally knew that Suyu had definitely discovered his existence back then. She just did not care and did not make a move. I wouldn't dare. Sect leader Bei Ming, you're too kind to me. A trace of embarrassment appeared in Suyu's eyes as she said with some trepidation. If she had known that Ziyue would grow to be such an existence that could be called a giant of the human clan, out of selfishness, she might have really made a move and killed him in advance. However, now, she did not dare to have the slightest thought. This was because, as a member of the Fox clan, she was born with sharp spiritual senses and could clearly sense how terrifying Ziyue was. That kind of terror made her feel terrified just by being slightly closer. It was a kind of fear that even the Fox clan king, great demon Suke, who also had the strength of the supreme realm, did not have. Naturally, she knew that the other party's strength might be more powerful than she had imagined. All right, tell me what you found. Ziyue did not delve too deeply into it and asked casually. Sect leader, I can be sure that the jade ruby we found this time is definitely at the level of a spirit treasure. It is not a simple inferior spirit treasure. It is very likely to be a middle spirit treasure or even higher. This is because the few puppets protecting the spirit treasure are too powerful. The weakest one is not inferior to me in strength. Fellow Taoist Fei Peng, fellow Taoist Suyu, and I joined forces and were so powerful that we could even defeat a peak primordial soul realm adept. However, we were completely helpless and were instead surrounded by danger and were injured many times. Of course, if that was all, it was difficult for us to determine the level of the spirit treasure. However, when the three of us rushed to the front of the spirit treasure, there was suddenly a shocking, killing formation that burst forth. That shocking killing formation was extremely powerful. If one was not careful, even a peak primordial soul realm adept could be trapped and killed. The fact that the spirit treasure was able to activate such a powerful formation to protect it shows that its spiritual nature is not something that an inferior spirit treasure can possess. Fu Yunfan hurriedly explained when he heard this. Ziyu nodded. Everyone knew that spirit treasures had spirits. However, the strength of a spirit treasure's spiritual nature was related to the level of the spirit treasure. For example, Ziyue's Kunwu Golden Pagoda and the Memory Inheritance Hall in the Dragon Palace were both superior spirit treasures. Hence, the spirit treasure could transform into a human form and communicate freely. Its spiritual intelligence was no different from that of an ordinary person. As for Fan Xingyu's middle spirit treasure Heaven Punishment Axe, although the spirit treasure's consciousness was quite clear, there was no hindrance in communicating. It could not appear in the form of an avatar in front of others. As for the inferior spirit treasure, its spirit treasure was even more immature. It could only communicate with its owner and could not awaken on its own to unleash the power of the spirit treasure. According to Fu Yunfan, the Jade Rui could activate a shocking formation to trap and kill a strong enemy. This meant that it had its own consciousness and could take over the formation and awaken on its own to unleash its power. Naturally, it was not something that a simple inferior spirit treasure could compare to. At the same time, he also understood that Fu Yunfan was not the only one who had discovered the spirit treasure this time. The three of them had discovered it together when they were exploring the ancient battlefield. Naturally, there would be a dispute over who the spirit treasure belonged to. This spiritual treasure is extremely precious. If Dark North Sect Master truly has the strength to block those 7 great puppets and that world-shaking killing formation, we naturally do not have the qualifications to touch that spiritual treasure Rui scepter, nor do we dare to touch it. However, as one of the discoverers of the spirit treasure, we naturally have to enjoy some of the spoils of war. Hence, we hope that Dark North Sect leader will try his best not to destroy the 7 puppets and preserve the parts of the shocking killing formation. Then, these spirit treasures will be distributed to us as spoils of war. At this moment, Suyu made a timely request and said, Sect leader, this is what we have discussed from the start. Fu Yunfan, who was at the side, quickly said, Oh yes, we also need a promise from Dark North Sect leader. That is, you cannot attack any of us in the ancient battlefield. If necessary, you have to protect us and ensure our safety. So you seem to have thought of something and quickly said. Chapter 8:18. There was no doubt that the numinous treasure was precious. Anyone who saw it would be tempted and would want to snatch it. However, they knew that with Zue, who was suspected to be an ultimate realm expert, there was no way they could obtain the numinous treasure. Therefore, they settled for the next best thing and placed their attention on the 7 puppets and the killing formation. Even though these 2 great treasures were surely unable to compare with the spirit treasure Jade Scepter, they were similarly precious treasures of shocking value. Once one obtained them, no matter if it was used as a trump card or an important method of protection, it would be sufficient to bring forth a shocking and enormous effect. However, although the treasures were good, they were still worried. They were worried that Ziyue would be greedy. They did not have any relationship with Bai Ziyue. nor did they know him well. Moreover, Bai Ziyue's strength was much stronger than theirs. Regardless of whether it was for their own safety or for their own peace of mind, they naturally had to take precautions in advance. Of course. Furthermore, if it is within my power, I will protect all of you so that you will not be harmed easily. Ziyue nodded. He understood Su Yu and the rest's worries and did not take it to heart. Of course, the premise of all this is that we can successfully break through the seal of the 7 puppets and charge into the killing formation. If Dark North sect leader is not powerful enough or does not contribute much, then this distribution will be foregone. Everything depends on one's ability. In short, this time, the numinous treasure Rui will belong to whoever contributes the most. Fei Peng was still doubtful of Ziyue's power. How powerful could a person who had just broken through to the primordial soul realm be, even if he was a genius? He definitely did not believe that Lin Fan had reached the ultimate realm. Of course, Ziyue smiled and did not say anything else. When Fu Yinfan saw this, he felt even more helpless. He had already predicted that Fei Peng and the rest would be shocked and ashamed when they saw Bai Ziyue's true strength. All right then, let's set off and enter the ancient battlefield. Seeing that the group had more or less reached an agreement, Su Yu was relieved and immediately spoke. He was about to set off. The others naturally didn't have any objections. Soon, the group of 4 turned into streams of light and disappeared into the mountain range late into the night. At that moment, Bai Ziyue and the others were not far from the ancient battlefield. Even though the group did not fly at full speed, the 3 of them and 1 demon were all above the primordial soul realm. Furthermore, the weakest of them was at the mid-stage primordial soul realm. Naturally, their speed was astonishing. An hour later, the group of people appeared in a place where the continuous void seemed to be sealed and distorted. It was the ancient battlefield that had existed for tens of thousands of years. From afar, the ancient battlefield seemed to be separated from the rest of the world. Anyone could see the obvious difference. Even on the ground, this side was a bit more lush and flourishing, while the other side was completely empty, only strange rocks standing in great numbers. The vegetation was sparse and yellowed, a scene of desolation and dilapidation. You'll reach the ancient battlefield if you enter from here. In the ancient desolate battlefield, the great Tao laws were not apparent, and the essence Qi was chaotic. There were many array formations that attacked and trapped enemies. From time to time, spatial rifts would appear, and waves of baleful aura would sweep out. Not only were communication-type magic treasures unusable, even the speed of cultivators would be greatly affected. If you're not careful, it's extremely easy to fall into a killing array or a spatial rift. As Fu Yinfan spoke, he explained with a serious expression on his face. Ziyue nodded. The great Tao laws were not apparent, and the essence Qi was chaotic. Naturally, communication-type magic treasures could not be used. In other words, once he entered the ancient battlefield, he would almost lose contact with the outside world. Only when he successfully walked out of the ancient battlefield could he use his communication-type magic treasure again. For example, Ding Chun had been trapped in the ancient battlefield for hundreds of years. As he could not send any messages, the outside world thought that he had died. It was only when Situ Zheng underwent the heavenly tribulation that he appeared for the first time. However, even though his strength was formidable, he wanted to utilize Situ Zheng's tribulation this time to completely announce his return. Unfortunately, he defended Bai Ziyue, causing him to die before achieving victory. In the end, he could only die with hatred in his heart and perish. Fu Yinfan was in the same situation previously. It was precisely because he was in the ancient battlefield that he could not contact Ziyue and went missing for half a year. As for the dangers within, there were naturally many. Whether it was the various killing arrays or the spatial rifts and spiritual tides that were everywhere and impossible to guard against, they were all extremely dangerous to cultivators. If one was not careful, there was a risk of dying. I'm coming in. Su Yu growled, and her fox first stood on end. She seemed to be much more nervous than before. Her body involuntarily emitted a protective yellow light that enveloped her entire body. Danger was everywhere in the ancient battlefield. Therefore, she was especially careful. The moment Ziyue entered the ancient battlefield, he also felt the difference in the surrounding environment. The Great Tao was not obvious and the essence Qi was chaotic. It was as if there was a special force that was constantly suppressing and blocking him. It even affected his divine consciousness slightly. As if he thought of something, Ziyue frowned and punched out casually. Rumble. The sky rumbled and the void caved in. However, it did not completely collapse. It was as if there was a special force that was supporting the sky and earth, preventing it from being shattered by him. As expected, although the ancient battlefield does belong to the ancient barren region, it has undergone huge changes due to the battle 10,000 years ago and the special changes in the environment. The stability of the sky and earth is also much stronger than the outside world. Even if I don't use the power of the primordial spirit, my punch is comparable to the full force of an expert at the peak of the primordial spirit realm. It is enough to break the spatial barrier and shatter the void. However, it did not shatter here. Ziyue muttered to himself, and a thoughtful look appeared on his face. This was only the outer region of the ancient battlefield. At least the power of a second-class expert at the peak of the primordial spirit realm was needed to shatter the spatial barrier and see the spatial turbulence. What would happen if it was the middle region or the land of the fallen immortals? Would it require a power of a first-class expert at the peak of the primordial spirit realm, or the supreme realm, or even the spirit-severing realm? This punch. The moment Ziyue punched out, Su Yu and Fei Peng's expressions changed. The punch was extremely powerful. Although it was far from the supreme realm, it was much more powerful than their full force attack. Fei Peng, in particular, was indescribably shocked. He did not feel the slightest fluctuation of the power of the primordial spirit from Ziyue's punch at all. Furthermore, when the punch was punched out, the majestic blood Qi gushed out like a river and formed the power of the righteous force. He was all too familiar with it. That was the sign of a powerful body cultivator's attack. Body cultivator? Could it be that this Dark North sect master is also a body cultivator like me? He was shocked and could not help but ask. Not really. My cultivation technique is special, and my physical body is relatively strong. Ziyue shook his head and denied it. The great primordial spirit scripture was a perfect primordial spirit cultivation technique that he had created. It cultivated both the primordial spirit and the physical body. The two could complement each other and advance together. It was also because of this that the strength of his physical body was so shocking. Compared to physical attack techniques, he was more proficient in primordial spirit attack techniques. Whether it was the primordial spirit, great divine light, the nine-extinction divine sword, or the heart sword technique, they were all primordial spirit attack techniques that could unleash his powerful combat strength. As for the physical body, he could only rely on his instincts and attack with pure strength. At most, it was the third or second level of the peak primordial spirit realm. It was a far cry from the supreme realm that could be achieved through the mysteries of the Tao techniques. His physical body is relatively strong? Just that? Fei Peng was dumbfounded. Who was he kidding? He was a true body cultivator who had cultivated his physical body to the mid-stage of the primordial spirit realm. His understanding of the strength of the physical body of a cultivator was better than that of countless people. When Ziyue punched out, he could clearly feel the terrifying power contained in his physical body. It was a surge of pure physical strength that was shockingly majestic and far surpassed his by countless times. However, Dark North sect leader doesn't seem to be a body cultivator. Although that attack was powerful, it did not unleash the full strength of Dark North sect leader's physical body. It was very rough. At most, he could only unleash 70% of his full strength. A full 30% of his strength was wasted. Immediately after, Fei Peng shook his head and said, As a body cultivator, he could naturally see that although Ziyue's attack was powerful, it was much weaker than him, a true body cultivator, in terms of the use of power. The reason why he could unleash the power of the third level of the peak primordial spirit realm was purely due to his physical strength. If he could fully utilize this power, he would be able to increase the power of his attack by a large margin. And if he mastered some mystique or secret physical body techniques, Ziyue's attack would definitely be greatly enhanced and undergo an earth-shattering change. However, it was precisely because of this that Fei Peng truly understood how laughable his previous doubts about Ziyue were. Ziyue cultivated both his physical body and primordial spirit. Although his current realm was far inferior to Fei Peng's, his physical strength was far superior to Fei Peng's. How powerful would he be when he unleashed his full combat strength and unleashed the mysteries of his Dao techniques? The supreme level? Ziyue's strength must have reached the supreme level. Then how can I perfectly unleash the power of my physical body? Ziyue's heart skipped a beat, and he could not help but ask. As the saying goes, there is always someone to learn from. Even if Fei Peng's strength was far inferior to his, Fei Peng could be considered an expert in the cultivation of the physical body, especially in the development and application of physical strength. Oh yes, this is a physical body cultivation technique that I obtained by chance. I think it will be of some help to you, Brother Fei, so I'll give it to you. Ziyue naturally knew the taboos of a cultivator's cultivation. With a flip of his hand, he took out an inheritance stone tablet and handed it to Fei Peng without hesitation. This is too valuable. I can't accept a reward for nothing. Fei Peng looked at the inheritance stone tablet and could not look away. After a long while, he expressed his gratitude respectfully and looked at Ziyue with eyes full of shock and admiration. The true dragon black armor technique. As one of the few cultivators who had reached the primordial spirit realm in the body cultivation lineage, he knew the origin of the true dragon black armor technique and knew how precious it was. He did not expect that Ziyue would give him a legendary technique that only belonged to the true dragon clan. It could be used as a supreme defensive Dao technique and could greatly increase a cultivator's physical strength. When he thought of Ziyue's physical strength, he could not help but be enlightened. Perhaps the reason why Ziyue's physical strength was so terrifying was because of the true dragon black armor technique. It's all right, take it. Ziyue smiled and said nonchalantly, as the saying goes, to be willing to part with something, one must first give up and then gain. Although the true dragon black armor technique was precious, it was nothing to him. He did not have any taboos about imparting Dao techniques to others. If he wanted to receive pointers from Lin Fan and master the way of using the physical body, how could he do it without giving something? When Fu Yanfan and Su Yu saw this, they were stunned and envious. They did not expect Ziyue to give away a supreme Dao technique so easily. This true dragon black armor technique is indeed very helpful to my cultivation. Thank you very much. Fei Peng hesitated for a moment before he finally spoke. Without hesitation, he flipped his hand and took out an inheritance stone tablet. He passed it to Bai Ziyue and said, "This is the 9x9 to 1 mysterious technique that I've cultivated. It has a detailed and clear explanation of the cultivation of the physical body and the way to use the physical body. Although it may not be as precious as the true dragon black armor technique, it is the most precious inheritance that I can give you. Oh yes, there's also a secret technique of the physical body called the Heaven Startling Staff Technique recorded on it. To the outside world, I said that I created it myself, but in fact, it was an inheritance of staff techniques that I obtained by chance. Perhaps it was because of the passage of time, but a small part of the inheritance stone tablet had collapsed, so the inheritance I obtained was not complete. It only contained the methods to perform the 72 staff strikes of the heavens, 36 staff strikes of the heavens, and 18 staff strikes of the heavens. As for the subsequent 9 heaven startling staff techniques, the 3 heaven startling staff techniques, and the last heaven startling staff technique, they're all incomplete. Based on some of the incomplete records and my own understanding, I spent hundreds of years only to deduce the heaven-startling 9 heaven-startling staff techniques. As for the subsequent 3 heaven-startling staff techniques and the last heaven-startling staff technique, I am still unable to create them. But even so, when I use the heaven-startling 9 heaven-startling staff techniques, my strength can explode again and reach the level of a peak primordial soul realm expert. It can be said that I have raised my strength by 1 level. Therefore, I believe that if this staff technique is complete, with the subsequent 3 heaven-startling staff techniques and the last heaven-startling staff techniques, it will definitely not be weaker than the true Dragon Black Armor technique. As Fei Peng spoke, there was obvious confidence on his face, but there was also some regret. If that wasn't the case, why would he be willing to hand over the succession of the stick technique? Chapter 819. Shocking Heaven Staff Technique. Could Fei Peng unleash the power of a peak primordial soul realm expert when he used the 9 strikes of the heaven-startling staff? What about the complete heaven-startling 3 staff strikes and the strongest heaven-startling 1 staff strike? Ziwei was stunned when he heard this. The others also revealed obvious shock on their faces. Such a staff technique was indeed worthy of the name Heaven Shocking. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was not weaker than the True Dragon Profound Armor technique. In fact, Ziwei even had a vague intuition that this staff technique was not just as simple as the True Dragon Armor technique. This was because when Fei Peng used the heaven-shocking 9 strikes of the cudgel, he could raise his strength by 2 levels and unleash a full blow that was comparable to that of a peak primordial soul realm expert. Even if it was only at the 3rd level of the peak primordial soul realm, it was still very shocking. Not to mention, there were still the heaven-startling 3 staff strikes and the most powerful heaven-startling 1 staff strike. If he could display the heaven-startling 3 rod strikes and the heaven-startling single rod strike, how shocking would the increase in his combat strength be? Was he at the first class of the pinnacle of the primordial spirit realm, or was he at the pinnacle, even breaking through the seal of the world and the suppression of the great Tao, comparable to the spirit's severing stage? Unfortunately, due to the passage of time or other factors, the legacy was incomplete. There were only the 72, 36, 18, and 9-stick techniques. Even the heaven-shocking 9-stick strikes were only completed by Fei Peng. As for the heaven-shocking 3-stick strikes and the heaven-shocking 1-stick strike, they were only guesses. Thank you, fellow Taoist Fei. Ziwei took the stone tablet of inheritance and scanned it with his divine sense. The first thing he looked at was the heaven-startling staff technique. Sure enough, he sensed the exquisiteness of it, especially the description of the heaven-startling 3 staff strikes and the heaven-startling staff technique that was faintly revealed in the incomplete technique. A trace of surprise appeared on his face. However, through the stone tablet of inheritance, he also discovered that this shocking staff technique was different from the other Tao techniques that he had imagined. The heaven-startling staff technique was a rare, secret technique for the body. Whether or not it could be used depended entirely on the strength of the cultivator's body. For example, the 72 rod strikes of the heaven-shocking staff technique required a cultivator to possess a body that was at least comparable to the peak of the golden core realm in order to execute it. If the strength of the body was insufficient, then it would be utterly impossible to execute the profundity and might of this staff technique. As for the 36 strikes of the heaven-startling staff, it required the physical strength of an early-stage primordial soul realm cultivator. The 18 strikes of the heaven-startling staff required the physical strength of an early-stage primordial soul realm cultivator. As for the heaven-startling 9 rod strikes, one would need to be at least at the late-stage primordial spirit realm in order to unleash its prowess. The reason why Fei Peng was able to execute this move with the strength of his mid-stage primordial spirit realm physical body was not only because the 9 strikes of the startling sky was something he had created after repairing it, but also because he had a secret technique that could stimulate the strength of his physical body in a short period of time. Only by combining the two would he be able to unleash an attack that required the physical strength of a late-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator. There is no description of the heaven-startling 3-staff strikes and the heaven-startling single-staff strike in the follow-up secret skill. However, based on this deduction, the strength of the cultivator's physical body had to be comparable to the pinnacle of the primordial spirit realm in order to execute the heaven-startling 3-staff strikes. Then what about the heaven-shocking staff strike? Is it the supreme realm or the spirit-severing stage? Ziyue could not help but frown. The supreme realm was actually still at the pinnacle of the primordial spirit realm. This was because there were very few powerful cultivators and even fewer inheritances. Therefore, he was not sure if there were any cultivators who could cultivate their physical body to the ultimate primordial spirit realm. Perhaps there were, or perhaps this was just a guess. At the very least, executing the heaven-startling single-staff strike would definitely be more difficult than he imagined. Of course, the prerequisite was that he could complete both the heaven-startling 3-staff strikes and the heaven-startling single-staff strike. Speaking of which, I am the one who has the advantage. This true Dragon Dark armor technique can definitely raise the strength of my physical body to another level. I believe it will not be difficult for me to enter the late-stage primordial spirit realm. Fei Peng laughed heartily with a look of satisfaction. It was normal when he thought about it. What Ziyue had given him was the complete Dragon Dark armor technique of the Dragon Clan. Its effect on the development of the physical body was extremely shocking and could be said to be the supreme cultivation method in the eyes of cultivators. As for the 9-to-1 cultivation technique that he had given him, it was relatively ordinary. At least in terms of inheritance level, it was at least 3 levels weaker. As for the heaven-startling single-staff strike, perhaps in terms of level, it was not at all inferior to the true Dragon Dark armor technique. However, it was after all incomplete and could only execute the heaven-startling 9-staff strikes. Naturally, it could not be compared to the true Dragon Dark armor technique. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Fei. This true Dragon Dark armor technique is not just a cultivation method for the physical body. It is also a rare and supreme defensive Dao technique. Once you have mastered it, your defensive power will be so strong that even a pinnacle primordial spirit realm cultivator would find it difficult to break through. At this moment, the Fox King, Su Yu, could not help but say with a look of envy. It was a pity that the inheritance of the Fox King clan had always been strictly guarded and could not be passed on privately. Otherwise, she would have taken out the secret inheritance of the Fox King, the spiritual divine art, and exchanged it with Ziyue. This is all thanks to the generosity of the North Nether Sect leader. Otherwise, how could I have such luck and opportunity? Fei Peng laughed and said. He was extremely satisfied with this exchange. It had even exceeded his expectations for this treasure-hunting trip. That's right. Our sect leader has always been very generous. This kind of inheritance is nothing in his eyes. Fu Yin Fan chimed in. He was actually a little envious that Fei Peng had obtained the inheritance of the true Dragon Dark armor technique, but he was not jealous. This was because he truly belonged to the North Nether Sect. Although he had not obtained the inheritance yet, it was only because he had just joined and had been trapped in the ancient battlefield for half a year. He believed that once he truly joined the North Nether Sect, there would be many inheritances and secret techniques. Moreover, the most important thing was the Law Cultivation Room. That was a treasure that could allow him to improve further and reach the pinnacle of the primordial spirit realm, or even the separated divinity realm. Compared to that, some inheritances were nothing. All right, let's continue our journey. Ziyue waved his hand and suggested when he saw the few of them praising him. The group naturally followed his suggestion and continued on their journey. They would not forget the goal of their trip. Even the outer regions of the ancient battlefield were extremely dangerous. Apart from the various killing formations and spatial cracks, there were also many powerful beasts. These ferocious beasts were originally demonic beasts that existed in the ancient battlefield. Under the influence of the chaotic Yuan Qi and the soaring evil Qi, although their strength had been greatly increased, their intelligence had also been affected. They had become existences that only knew bloodthirsty, killing instincts. Roar. The roar of the beasts was earth-shattering. The appearance of Ziyue and the rest easily attracted the attention of a group of beasts. Under the lead of an advanced golden elixir realm beast, 7 or 8 weaker beasts charged straight at them. The beasts in the outer regions are mostly weaker and less dangerous. Don't worry, North Nether Sect leader. Leave it to us. Fei Peng was in a good mood after receiving Ziyue's bow. He shouted loudly and went forward to welcome them. He waved a long rod in his hand. Buzz. A total of 72 rod shadows swept down rapidly. Boom, boom, boom. Almost every ferocious beast had to endure at least 5 staff shadows. The ferocious beast in the lead, in particular, was struck by a total of 20 staff shadows. In an instant, the entire group of ferocious beasts was turned into a pile of minced meat, their lives extinguished. Is this the heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes? Ziyue muttered. The cultivation method of the heaven-shocking rod technique flashed across his mind. After comparing the two, his mind was inexplicably touched. He also simulated the mysteries of the heaven-shocking rod technique in his mind. He immediately felt that his control over his body had greatly increased. Soon, it increased from the original 70% to 80%, 90%, 100%. At the same time, his understanding of the heaven-shocking rod technique also increased rapidly. 40%, 50%, 60%. In just a short period of time, he had completely comprehended the heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes of the heaven-shocking rod technique and could perform it smoothly. Since I can perform the heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes, doesn't it mean that I've already mastered this secret technique? With this thought, Ziyue quickly glanced at the attribute panel. As expected, he saw the words heaven-shocking rod technique, mastering the heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes. This heaven-shocking rod technique is indeed unusual. It is divided into several secret techniques and progressively progresses. The perfection of each secret technique is the mastery of the next secret technique. For example, the heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes, after the perfection of the heaven-shocking 76 rod strikes, and so on. Ziyue was not surprised that he could master the heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes so quickly. With his current strength, any secret technique was actually relatively simple in his eyes, let alone the heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes. However, in terms of the degree of delicacy, it was at most at the level of a divine power. Naturally, it was easy for him to understand the mastery. On the contrary, through the words mastery of the heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes on the attribute panel, he had a clearer understanding of the power of the heaven-shocking rod technique. It should be known that he had also cultivated advanced secret techniques, which are the Great Magnetic Slash and Great Magnetic Divine Light that he had obtained from the Magnetism True Lord. The difference in power after the two advanced secret techniques was like heaven and earth. However, the heaven-shocking rod technique had a total of 5 advanced secret techniques. Even if the increase in power after each advanced secret technique was not as great as the Great Magnetic Slash and Great Magnetic Divine Light, the power after each advanced secret technique would increase by a large margin. Whether it was the degree of mystery of the secret technique or the power after it was performed, it was far superior to ordinary advanced secret techniques. Since I've already mastered the mastery, there's no need to delay anything. Let's upgrade it directly. The group continued to carefully move towards the depths of the ancient battlefield, while Ziyue's mind was more focused on his attribute panel. Seeing that he had mastered the mastery of the heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes, and that his soul power had accumulated for almost half a year, even if it did not increase by much every day, it was already more than 900 million soul power points, which should be enough for him to upgrade it. consuming 80 million soul power points to upgrade the heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes from mastery to mastery. Upgrade. Bai Ziyue did not feel the pinch for such a small expenditure. What he was looking forward to more was the power and mystery of the heaven-shocking 9 rod strikes, the heaven-shocking 3 rod strikes, and the heaven-shocking 1 rod strike of the heaven-shocking rod technique. The incomplete secret technique might be a huge problem for others, but in Ziyue's opinion, it was just a matter of spending more soul power. Early on in his cultivation, when he was practicing martial arts, he had used the attribute panel to complete the subsequent cultivation method. Although the heaven-shocking rod technique was extremely mysterious, it should be able to be successfully deduced by the attribute panel. The moment the soul power of 80 million soul powers was exhausted, a large amount of soul power related to the heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes flashed across Ziyue's mind. He seemed to have gone through hundreds of years of diligent and tireless cultivation and directly cultivated this physical secret technique to the mastery level. The heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes at the mastery level is stronger than the Great Magnetic Slash and the 9 Extinction Divine Sword. Ziyue silently compared and quickly looked at the attribute panel again. Sure enough, he saw the words, Mastery of the Heaven-Shocking 36 Rod Strikes, consuming 160 million soul power points to upgrade the heaven-shocking 36 rod strikes from mastery to mastery. Upgrade. Consuming 220 million soul power points to upgrade the heaven-shocking 18 rod strikes from mastery to mastery. Upgrade. Ziyue chose to upgrade one after another. Suddenly, countless information about the heaven-shocking 36 rod strikes and the heaven-shocking 18 rod strikes flashed across his mind. As the muscles all over his body trembled, it was as if he had cultivated these 2 techniques for countless years in a short period of time, forming the most instinctive muscle memory. The strength of his physical body was many times stronger than Fei Peng's and was comparable to a body cultivator at the peak of the primordial soul realm. After using soul power to upgrade each technique to the mastery level, he naturally could easily master these 2 physical secret techniques and use them proficiently. Next, it's the heaven-shocking 9 rod strikes. The cultivation method of the heaven-shocking 9 rod strikes appeared in Ziyue's mind. Because he had cultivated the heaven-shocking 72 rod strikes, the heaven-shocking 36 rod strikes, and the heaven-shocking 18 rod strikes to mastery, his understanding of the heaven-shocking rod strikes was, to a certain extent, even better than Fei Peng, who had mastered this secret technique for nearly 1,000 years. Therefore, he easily discovered the problem with the heaven-startling 9 rod strikes. Previously, Fei Peng said that the first 3 moves of the heaven-shocking rod strikes were relatively complete and could be directly cultivated and used. However, the heaven-shocking 9 rod strikes, the heaven-shocking 3 rod strikes, and the heaven-shocking 1 rod strike were mostly damaged due to time or other reasons. There were only a few scattered records. Therefore, the heaven-shocking 9 rod strikes was actually a technique that Fei Peng had perfected after he had repaired it. However, although Fei Peng was a rare body cultivator expert in the astral boundary and had extremely high achievements in body cultivation, he was still inferior to the person who had created the heaven-shocking rod strikes. Even if he had repaired the secret technique, it was still difficult for him to truly understand the essence of it. Therefore, the heaven-shocking 9 rod strikes that he had repaired was not a complete technique and was not perfect. Ziyue quickly understood the reason for the problem, and almost instantly, he thought of using the attribute panel to repair it. Chapter 820. In the early days of Ziyue's cultivation, he had used the optimization ability of the attribute panel to repair the incomplete technique. Even though this heaven-startling staff technique, in terms of grade, was countless times stronger and more exquisite than the secret skill that he had optimized and repaired in the early days, he believed that with the power of the attribute panel, he would definitely be able to achieve this. It was just a matter of how much spiritual energy he had to spend. As for spiritual energy, although Ziwe felt that it was precious, he would not be stingy if he used it to increase his strength. Spending 100 million spiritual energy can optimize the heaven-startling 9-staff techniques. It can be optimized and perfected as expected. Furthermore, the amount of soul energy consumed was much lower than what I had imagined. However, this is normal. This heaven-startling 9-staff techniques is actually a complete secret skill of the physical body. Although in terms of power, it may be slightly weaker than the original secret skill, and not as exquisite as the original version, it is still a secret skill that was completed by Fei Peng, a body cultivator powerhouse, according to the original method. It is equally powerful and relatively complete. After it is used, it will have at least 80% of the original power. Naturally, the amount of soul energy needed to repair it isn't that terrifying. Ziwe was shocked, but he quickly let out a sigh of relief. Although 100 million spiritual energy was a lot, in his opinion, compared to the complete heaven-startling 9-staff techniques, it was nothing. This brand new complete heaven-startling 9-staff techniques would definitely be more exquisite and powerful than the heaven-startling 9-staff techniques created by Fei Peng. Optimize. Without hesitation, Ziwe quickly chose to optimize. Instantly, Ziwe's mind became clear. Then, in the next moment, countless methods of using the heaven-startling 9-staff techniques flashed through his mind. He analyzed, understood, reorganized, supplemented, and finally formed it. In just a short period of time, he seemed to have experienced the creation process of the supreme powerhouse who created the heaven-startling staff techniques in ancient times. He created the heaven-startling 9-staff techniques in a simple and swift manner. So this is the true and complete heaven-startling 9-staff techniques. Compared to the heaven-startling 18-staff techniques, not only is it more exquisite, but when it is used and stacked, the power is even more terrifying. With one strike of the staff, 9 staff shadows are formed. These 9 staff shadows can be spread out, but they can also be stacked. With one staff stacked on top of another, the power will increase and reach an even more terrifying level. Ziwe knew that the shocking heavenly staff art was a technique of transforming one staff into 10,000 staffs, and then combining them into 72 staffs, 36 staffs, 18 staffs, 9 staffs, 3 staffs, and 1 staffs. Each strike of the 9 stick strikes of the heaven-startling 9 stick strikes had been fused with the power of the 4 stick shadows. Now that they were superimposed on each other, its power was naturally astonishing. He estimated that if he mastered the 9 strikes of the heaven-startling 9 strikes and used it himself, he would be able to unleash a power comparable to the ultimate primordial soul stage with his current physical strength. The ultimate primordial soul stage was a threshold. Even if his physical strength was comparable to that of a body cultivator at the peak of the primordial soul realm, it would not be easy for him to unleash an attack that was comparable to that of an ultimate realm cultivator. Countless body cultivators who had been stuck at the peak of the primordial soul realm for countless years found it extremely difficult to unleash an attack that was comparable to that of an ultimate realm cultivator. Some might even be stuck at that level for the rest of their lives, let alone body cultivators. For Ziwe to reach the ultimate realm with the 9 strikes of the heaven-startling 9 strikes, one could only imagine how exquisite and powerful this staff technique was. Most importantly, the 9 strikes of the heaven-startling 9 strikes is not the limit of the power of this staff technique. Above that, there are still the heaven-startling 3 strikes and the most powerful heaven-startling single strike. Ziwe pondered again. He couldn't help but look forward to the next part of the cultivation method. However, after completing the 9 strikes of the heaven-startling 9 strikes, I do not have much spiritual power left. I am only left with 270 million points, which is not enough to fully master the 9 strikes of the heaven-startling 9 strikes. Ziwe glanced at the attribute panel and sighed. In the end, he did not continue to upgrade it. During this period of time, Fu Yunfan, Fei Peng, and the others successively took action and dealt with a group of ferocious beasts. However, they did not know that Ziyue had undergone a metamorphosis in body cultivation within this short period of time. Not only had he completely mastered the power of his physical body, but he had also cultivated the heaven-startling staff technique that he had just acquired to an extremely profound level. In terms of mastery and power of the heaven-startling staff technique, he was even better than Fei Peng. Be careful, there's a spatial crack in front. Fox Demon King, Su Yu suddenly shouted a warning. Hearing this, Fei Peng hurriedly swung his staff. With a swoosh, the staff's shadow dissipated. Then, a long spatial crack that almost crossed a large area of space appeared in front of everyone in a crisscross pattern. In the battlefield of the ancient desolate region, the most difficult thing to deal with and impossible to guard against is the spatial crack. If one does not master the powerful spiritual eye secret technique or have extraordinary senses, one will not be able to detect the existence of the spatial crack. One may be severely injured unknowingly. Fei Peng's heart skipped a beat as he spoke with an ugly expression. He was a body cultivator. Although his combat power was strong, his senses were extremely weak. Therefore, he hated the hidden spatial crack. The spatial crack is originally hidden in the depths of space and cannot be seen by the naked eye. Only when one's senses are raised to the level of being able to touch the essence of heaven and earth can one detect it. If not for Brother Su's extraordinary talent and exquisite spiritual divine technique, it would have been much more difficult for us to break in. Fu Yanfan could not help but say, in terms of senses, he was also not good at it. Brother Fu, you are flattering me. In front of a true God, how would I dare to claim credit? With my ability, I can only be of some use in the outer region. If we really reach the central region, I think we will need sect leader Bei Ming to come out. As he spoke, Su could not help but look at Ziyue. Ziyue smiled faintly. He knew that Su Yu was vaguely testing him, but he did not mind. With his understanding of heaven and earth and the characteristics of his golden soul, he naturally could easily detect the existence of the spatial crack. However, he believed that Su Yu and the rest could enter and exit safely. Naturally, they had the ability to solve this problem. A day later, a special spatial fluctuation suddenly appeared in everyone's hearts. Inexplicably, everyone felt that although the spiritual chi in heaven and earth was frighteningly dense, it was also filled with a violent aura. Just by absorbing it slightly, one could feel a piercing pain. Be careful. We have already entered the central region. In the central region, the spiritual chi is even more violent. The strength of the ferocious beast has also increased significantly. Even the number of spatial cracks and ultimate killing formations has increased. Of course, the most important thing is that in the central region, besides these known dangers, the most dangerous thing is the hunters. Fei Peng said solemnly. Hunters? Ziyue was stunned. The hunters are the various primordial soul realm experts who occupy the ancient battlefield. As everyone knows, there are countless treasures in the ancient battlefield. Due to the special environment of heaven and earth, rare treasures are born every once in a while. Therefore, in various parts of the astral realm, there are cultivators who have fallen into poverty and know that they have no hope of reaching the great Tao. They take the risk and step into this place in hopes of obtaining a great opportunity. However, although there were many treasures in the ancient battlefield, not everyone would be able to obtain them. Therefore, some experts are unwilling to give up and will act against other cultivators, killing them to steal their treasures and seize their opportunities. Fei Peng explained and said, I see. Ziyue nodded. Suddenly, he was stunned. Without batting an eyelid, he discovered that in the depths of the void where they had to pass through, there was a cultivator carefully hiding. Obviously, he was that hunter that Fu Yunfan and the rest had mentioned. At this moment, he was waiting at the place where Ziyue and the rest had to pass through, ready to strike at any time. It's Venerable Sun Miao of the 9-star Tao Palace. He is at the peak of the primordial soul realm and is extremely skilled in assassination techniques. His concealment techniques are even more superb. According to what I know, he entered the ancient, desolate battlefield 70 years ago. From the looks of it now, he has been hunting other fellow cultivators to obtain opportunities. Baizue already had a relatively detailed understanding of some of the primordial soul realm experts in the entire star boundary. At this moment, by comparing the other party's appearance and methods, he could almost immediately determine the identity of this person, and some information about him flashed through his mind. As the world's #1 assassin organization, the 9-star Dao Palace was especially skilled in assassination techniques. Sun Miao was one of the few experts in the 9-star Dao Palace. Not only was his mastery of immortal techniques extremely high, reaching the peak of the primordial soul realm, his concealment techniques were also frighteningly powerful. He could hide in a spatial membrane. If not for a cultivator who had an extremely good understanding of space, it would be extremely difficult to discover his tracks, even if their detection techniques were superb. For example, Suyu is naturally very cautious in the central region of the ancient battlefield. He had raised his detection abilities to the maximum, but he still could not find any trace of Sun Miao. This meant that Ziyue's mastery was not weak, and his understanding of the laws of the world was extremely profound. Most importantly, his primordial soul was formed from the fusion of his soul with the great golden spirit thread. It was born with a unique ability that allowed him to see the myriad laws of the world and the rise and fall of all things. Naturally, he could easily see where Sun Miao was hiding. There are a total of 4 primordial soul realm cultivators. The strongest is Fu Yunfan, who is at the late primordial soul realm. Fu Yunfan is from the Flowing Cloud sect. However, the Flowing Cloud sect is a small sect that fell into ruin several hundred years ago. Its heritage is relatively weak, so its strength should be limited. Next is the body cultivator expert, Fei Peng. Fei Peng's strength is not to be underestimated. It is said that the origin of his startling staff technique is not simple. Once it is fully unleashed, even I will find it difficult to deal with him. As for Su Yu, who is from the Fox King clan, he is definitely weak in a head-on battle. Although his illusory techniques are difficult to deal with, they are not much of a threat to me. Finally, there is the human cultivator. He is clearly a newly advanced primordial soul realm expert. His aura is extraordinary, but he is only at the mid-primordial soul realm at best. I can easily suppress him. Sun Miao was very careful and very cautious. When he discovered Ziyue's trail early on, he immediately compared the information he had and began to determine their identity and strength. The reason why he had been able to succeed time and time again and become one of the top assassins in the 9-star Dao Palace was because of his cautiousness. Of these 4, 1 is at the late primordial soul realm, and the other 3 are at the mid-primordial soul realm. Although I don't know much about the unfamiliar cultivator, he is only at the mid-primordial soul realm. Moreover, he has only just stepped into the mid-primordial soul realm. He should not be able to do much, so his influence on me will be greatly different. Therefore, I can make my move this time. Sun Miao carefully calculated and soon came to a conclusion. As a hunter, he did not lack patience, but in a place like the ancient battlefield, he needed even more patience. Due and the others' immortal techniques, as well as the strength and methods of the various experts described in the 9-star Dao Palace, finally made up his mind. 10,000 meters, 9,000 meters, 8,000 meters, the group of 4 carefully approached. Suyu took the lead, followed by Fu Yunfan and Fei Peng, and finally Ziyue. Finally, Suyu unknowingly passed by him. Then Fu Yunfan and Fei Peng. Even though Sun Miao was completely confident that he could instantly kill Fei Peng and the others when they passed by him, he did not act rashly. At the end of the day, he was still worried about the unknown expert among the 4 of them. Yes, even though he had a great advantage and Sun Miao was more than 70% confident, he still chose to be careful. Subsequently, the first target of his attack was by Ziyue. No matter what magical abilities this person had, he had to ensure that he would immediately unleash his attacks on him and kill him, eliminating a major threat. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, by Ziyue approached and followed the pace of Suyu, who was in the lead, unknowingly. Now is the time, Sun Miao growled at this moment. His body moved, and he was about to emerge from the depths of the void barrier. Now is the time, Ziyue's eyes lit up. With a shout, he flipped his hand, and a long staff appeared. This staff was one of the spoils of war he had obtained from the previous battle. It was a mid-quality soul transformation treasure. He casually took it out and swung it. The moment the staff was swung out, the starry sky trembled. The chaotic Yuan Qi in the center of the ancient battlefield exploded as 18 overlapping staff shadows lashed out. Bang! 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 Before a series of loud noises could be heard, the staff shadows had already reached into the depths of the void membrane and ruthlessly struck Sun Miao's body. What? Sun Miao's eyes widened. He was dumbfounded and extremely shocked. How is this possible? Did he discover my tracks from the beginning? He could not believe it. One must know that his concealment technique was the secret technique he was most proud of. Even Supreme Realm experts would find it extremely difficult to discover his tracks when he was completely still. But now, he was discovered by a cultivator who had just entered the mid-primordial soul transformation realm. Immediately afterward, his heart was filled with rage. So what if he was discovered? How could a mere mid-primordial soul transformation realm cultivator be so confident that he dared to attack him directly? Chapter 8:21. Most importantly, he realized that the staff technique used by the mid-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator did not have the slightest primordial spirit fluctuation. What did this mean? Didn't that mean that the technique used by the other party was a rare body cultivator technique? Physical cultivation technique? Sun Miao sneered, his eyes full of contempt. In his eyes, physical cultivation had always been a lowly existence. Since ancient times, had he ever heard of a physical cultivator who had attained the Tao and advanced to the spirit-severing stage? Almost none. Even if the opponent's technique was somewhat exquisite, how could it move him? Not to mention, his immortal technique realm was far superior to the opponent's. Thinking of this, the flying dagger in Sun Miao's hand flashed and disappeared. He stretched out his palms slightly and pushed out a palm print. Bang! The flying dagger collided with Ziyue's staff in an instant and was instantly sent flying. Then, Ziyue's staff shadow did not decrease in strength and ruthlessly smashed into his palm print. The palm print shattered and the staff shadow smashed into his body. Boom! True supremacy, Sun Miao's body was instantly sent flying. This was the heaven-startling 18 staff strikes. With the strength of Ziyue's physical body, the heaven-startling 18 staff strikes was at the perfection level, and its power was shocking. Even if the staff shadow was not as powerful as imagined and was only equivalent to the full power of second-tier primordial spirit realm expert, the superposition of the 18 staff shadows was still very shocking. If it wasn't for Sun Miao's 2 true attacks and the defensive robe on his body, he would have been heavily injured. What? Someone ambushed us? It's 9-star Dao Palace's true supremacy, Sun Miao. At this moment, Su Yu, Fu Yunfan, and the others were shocked, and their faces turned ugly. Especially Su Yu, who was in the lead, who was sweating profusely. As the leader, she had always been very confident in her perception, but she couldn't sense any trace of true exalted Sun Miao. What shocked her even more was that she had just walked past true exalted Sun Miao, and the distance between them was only 100 meters. 100 meters was a distance that could be easily covered by a primordial spirit realm cultivator and could be said to be very close. With true exalted Sun Miao's methods, none of them dared to say that they would have been able to escape. They would have all been killed in an instant. Thinking that they had just walked through the gates of hell, the 3 of them instantly broke out in cold sweat and felt incomparably fortunate. Fortunately, true Paragon Sun Miao's target was not them. Fortunately, Sectmaster Darknorth was with them. When they saw the Dark North sect master attack, not only did he force true Paragon Sun Miao out, but he also shattered his opponent's attack and sent him flying. Their hearts were filled with excitement and admiration. The Dark North sect master is a Lamiter. True Paragon Sun Miao is really courting death by attacking him. True Paragon Sun Miao has been in the ancient battlefield for over 70 years. Perhaps he doesn't even know the identity and strength of the Dark North sect master. Otherwise, no matter how bold he is, he probably wouldn't dare to make a move against Dark North sect leader. That's normal. Who would have thought that sect master is only at the beginning stages of the primordial soul realm? Middle stage? The sect master has already broken through to the middle stage of the essence soul realm. Fuyan Fan was about to agree and sigh at the fact that although Ziyue's cultivation level was low, he was terrifyingly strong. However, he suddenly realized that Ziyue's cultivation level had already reached the middle stage of the essence soul realm. He immediately exclaimed in shock. The others also couldn't help but be moved. Usually, if one didn't deliberately check, it would be extremely difficult for outsiders to detect the strength of a cultivator of the same cultivation level. Previously, they instinctively thought that Ziyue was only at the early stage of the essence soul realm. They didn't expect that when they saw him attack and the aura of his immortal technique, they realized that he had already reached the middle stage of the essence soul realm. Thinking that he had just broken through to the early stage of the essence soul realm, the few of them couldn't help but look at each other. Wait, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but what Daoist Dark North used just now seems to be a body cultivator's secret technique, the Heaven Shocking Staff technique. Suddenly, the Fox Demon King, Su Yu, cried out in disbelief. If he remembered correctly, it had only been a day since Bai Ziyue had obtained the inheritance of the Heaven Shocking Staff technique. In just a day, he had already mastered such a secret technique. It is indeed a body cultivator's secret technique, the Heaven Shocking Staff technique. Moreover, although I don't want to admit it, I have to say that the Heaven Shocking Staff technique that Sect Leader Dark North used, especially the Heaven Shocking 18 staff techniques, is much more exquisite and powerful than when I used it. Fei Peng was also shocked to the point that he was almost numb. He spoke with a confused tone. He knew that the Dark North sect leader had such a great reputation. Although he had just broken through to the early stage of the Essence Soul realm, he was already recognized as one of the strongest in the Extreme realm. He must have been extraordinarily talented and could be said to be a rare genius in the immortal technique world. However, he didn't expect that the other party had only just come into contact with the Heaven Shocking Staff technique. He didn't even see the other party split his attention to cultivate it. He only glanced at it. In the end, not only did the other party completely comprehend the body cultivator's secret technique, but he could also easily use it. Be it in terms of exquisiteness or power, the other party was far superior to him. He was at a loss. It was a huge blow to him. Could it be that his hundreds and thousands of years of hard work and comprehension of the Heaven Shocking Staff technique were all a joke? Ziyue naturally didn't know about Fei Peng's exclamation and helplessness. Of course, even if he knew, he wouldn't care. Fei Peng had misunderstood that he was extraordinarily talented and was the best of his generation. On the contrary, he was happy to see that. If possible, he hoped that the secret of the attribute panel would forever be buried in his heart and not let anyone know. After sending Sun Miao flying with one strike, Ziyue didn't hesitate and attacked again. His figure flashed, and he stepped into the void. His thick chi and blood rose like a fiery cloud. The long staff that he held tightly trembled under the influence of his chi and blood. It even shot out wisps of chi and blood aura. Wong, wong, wong. Suddenly, the long staff swung out, and thousands of staff shadows swept down. The Heaven Shocking 72 staff techniques. The Heaven Shocking 36 staff techniques. The Heaven Shocking 18 staff techniques. Then, Ziyue used the momentum to display the Heaven Shocking 9 staff techniques. In a short period of time, Bai Ziyue had completely revealed his Heaven Shocking cudgel technique. The whole world seemed to be swept up by the cudgel shadows, covering the heaven and earth. The void exploded. The center of the cudgel shadows was even oppressed into chaos, and the violent pneuma turned into mesons. How is this possible? Who the hell are you? Since when has there been such a powerful body cultivator in the star boundary? Sun Miao roared, his face instantly turning incomparably pale. Bai Ziyue's attacks were too concentrated. One strike after another, it was as if they were endless. Moreover, each strike was stronger than the previous one. Every strike seemed to be able to collapse the world. Even though Bai Ziyue's strength was shocking and he had many defensive techniques to protect himself, he still felt a sense of despair. Most importantly, he couldn't use the concealment and escape technique that he had regarded as his trump card under the pressure of the staff shadows. It was even more difficult for him to hide in the depths of space and escape. Thus, he could only take it head-on. The Universe 8 trigram shield, the True Law armor, the Great Light shield. He used defensive treasures one after another, but they were quickly shattered by Ziyue's staff shadows. Boom! 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 Shadow after shadow of the staff smashed down, each one stronger than the last. Almost every staff strike would have been able to pierce through space and reveal the chaotic flow of the void. When it landed on Sun Miao's body, it was even more powerful, causing him to tremble. Even though he had many defensive methods to protect himself, the force penetrated through and he was unable to bear it. He was severely injured. Even his Yuan spirit was faintly showing cracks. Clearly, he wouldn't be able to last much longer. Fellow Taoist, spare me. I am the Hall Master of the 9-star Tao Palace, and the uncle of the 9-star Tao Palace's Palace Lord, Sun Batong. If fellow Taoist is willing to spare me, I am willing to give you a precious treasure and swear on my heart demons that I will not use the 9-star Tao Palace to attack fellow Taoist. I hope that you can give face to the Palace Lord of the 9-star Tao Palace, the Paramount Realm Cultivator Sun Batong, and let me go. Sensing his own situation, Sun Miao realized that he couldn't escape or resist, especially with Su Yu, Fu Yunfan, and Fei Peng glaring at him from afar. True Paragon Sun Miao truly panicked and hurriedly begged for mercy. The Palace Lord of the 9-star Tao Palace, the uncle of Sun Batong, who ranks in the top 3 of the 10 Paramount Realm cultivators. Ziyue asked in an inexplicable tone. Yes, in truth, our Palace Lord created a heaven-breaker Tao technique more than 100 years ago, breaking through the suppression of the great Tao. Now that 100 years have passed, his foundation has grown even deeper, and his strength has naturally increased. I estimate that it won't be difficult for him to become the strongest in the world. Sun Miao relaxed and hurriedly explained, a hint of smugness in his voice. Sun Batong was a peerless expert of the current generation. His talent was outstanding, and he was extraordinary. When he was at the middle stage of the primordial spirit realm, he had managed to defeat the peak primordial spirit realm Mountain Lord. And when he was at the late stage of the primordial spirit realm, he had displayed extraordinary strength that allowed him to contend with the 9 Paramount Realm cultivators. He was publicly acknowledged as the 10th Paramount Realm cultivator. Now that Sun Batong's strength had reached the peak of the primordial spirit realm, and he had created a heaven-breaker Tao technique, breaking through the suppression of the great Tao and the suppression of the great Tao, his strength was even more astonishing. He could reign supreme among the many Paramount Realm cultivators and possibly become the strongest. He believed that if anyone heard this, they would be fearful and give him some face. Is that so? Then the 9-star Tao Palace and Sun Batong are threatening me? Unfortunately, I don't care. If you want to die, you'll still die. However, Bai Ziyue soon sneered. The rod shadows in his hand didn't stop. He kept striking out with his heaven-shocking rod art, which evolved into beams of solid rod shadows. Boom, boom, boom. No, Sun Miao's expression changed drastically. The defensive spirit light in front of him finally failed to block the continuous attacks and shattered. Then, Ziyue's staff smashed into his head, turning him into a pulp. His primordial spirit did not even manage to escape before he perished. As expected, the stronger one is, the more spiritual energy one will gain after death. Sun Miao was not weak, and he had long reached the peak of the primordial spirit realm. Now that he has perished, the spiritual energy he gave me has reached more than 70 million. It's definitely not a small amount. Ziyue silently glanced at his stats panel and revealed a look of satisfaction. With this, his spiritual energy had increased by another notch, reaching more than 400 million. He believed that it would not be long before he could complete the heaven-shocking 9 staff strikes. When the heaven-shocking 9 staff strikes was complete, with his strength, he would definitely be able to surpass the limits and reach the paramount realm. Thinking of this, he looked forward to it even more. One had to know that he was a cultivator who cultivated both his soul and body. Although his Tao techniques were shocking and had already reached the state of extremity, he was obviously much weaker in terms of body cultivation. He had an extremely terrifying physical strength, but he didn't know how to use it at all. During this trip to the ancient barren battlefield, he had obtained Fei Peng's body cultivation technique and the heaven-shocking staff technique. To him, it was a huge opportunity. Not only did it help him make up for his shortcomings, but it also gave him a deeper understanding and idea of the heaven-defying Tao technique that he was about to create. He believed that it would not be long before he could break through the shackles of the unseen world and completely create that heaven-defying Tao technique. Then, Ziyue waved his hand and put away Sun Miao's storage bag and many treasures. With a quick glance, the value of the other party's treasures was clear to him. There was no need to mention the primordial spirit treasures. Sun Miao had hunted many experts of the same level in the ancient battlefield for more than 70 years, and all of them were stored in his storage bag. Therefore, he had found no less than 20 primordial spirit treasures. Among them, there were 3 supreme-grade primordial spirit treasures, 7 superior-grade primordial spirit treasures, 9 middle-grade primordial spirit treasures, and the rest were inferior-grade primordial spirit treasures. In addition, there were all kinds of heavenly treasures that had appeared in the ancient battlefield. There were also many Dharma treasures that had appeared in killing formations or dangerous places. There was no lack of value among them, and even Ziyue would benefit from them. In addition to other miscellaneous items, spirit stones, and even several inheritances that could lead one to the peak of the primordial spirit realm, the initial estimate made Ziyue's expression change. The total value of all the treasures had reached the level of 7 million supreme-grade spirit stones. Back then, my demonic saber was only exchanged for 2 million supreme-grade spirit stones. Doesn't this mean that my harvest this time is comparable to 2 spirit treasures? Ziyue mumbled, feeling a little excited. Even he himself did not expect that his harvest this time would be so great. Although numinous treasures were priceless, with so many treasures, he and the North Nether sect would definitely be able to strengthen their foundation. Dark North sect master Sun Miao is not a simple person. Not to mention his identity as the 9-star Tao Palace Master, Sun Batong, the Palace Master of the 9 Palace Tao Palace behind him, is an extremely terrifying existence. It is said that he has the strength to become the strongest in the world. If he finds out that Sun Miao died at the hands of Dark North Sect Master. Although it is not clear whether Sun Miao and Sun Batong came from the same clan, Sun Miao is the 9-star Tao Palace Master and ranks in the top 3 in the 9-star Tao Palace. Palace Master Sun, be it for public or private reasons, you will definitely seek justice for his death. Fei Peng could not help but remind him worriedly after some hesitation. Sun Wudong's strength was too strong. He could almost be called the strongest in the world. Although he acknowledged Ziyue's strength, he did not think that Ziyue, who had just stepped into the Paramount Realm, would be a match for Sun Miao. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.